/elections to find out your voting options.
KFAI and the Minnesota Department of Health are holding a COVID-19 vaccination event at KFAI Saturday, October 16th from 10 to 3 p.m. in the parking lot behind the Bailey Building at 1808 Riverside Avenue, Minneapolis. It is a walk-up event for first dose vaccinations.
But I don't have an appointment.
There is no need to make an appointment in advance.
But I don't have proof of insurance.
Or show proof of insurance.
I don't have any money with me.
There is no cost to receive the vaccine. Protect yourself and your community by getting vaccinated. Email contact@kfai.org for more information.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Got a rich and special program for you today. Special because this season is special. A lot of great things, challenging things going on, but also special because we're going to extend the program today a couple of extra hours. We're going to be going into the 2 o'clock hour and the 3 o'clock hour, sitting in for our friend and colleague, Lady J, out under the weather a little bit. We wish her well and thank her for the opportunity to just sit in for her. And it gives us a chance to bring more of what we do before you, and that is try to create what we call robust conversations. Well, today, I hope we will demonstrate our ability to fit that bill, to live up to the standard, the expectation. We're going to begin by talking about a program being advanced by the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. It's called the HOPE program. HOPE stands for Helping Others by Providing Education. And Hennepin County Sheriff David P. Hutchinson, the creator of the program, is here with me today to talk about that. Sheriff, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am.
Good to see you. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane.
Thank you very much for having me on, sir. It's an honor to be a part of the show.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. We haven't talked before. I've certainly followed your career, your elections, your work, your voice, and your vision. So I'm really, really, really both grateful and appreciative of the opportunity to have you on this platform today. You know, the proposition, helping others by providing education, I'm going to let you just talk about this. This is your brainchild. And what's the vision? What's the mission?
Well, again, thank you. The mission is to give people, not everybody who gets arrested is a bad person. They made bad decisions. We've all made bad decisions. Some of us don't end up in jail, thankfully. I think it's important that we use this community and, you know, our business friends in the business community to give these people education. So we're going to give them Chromebooks so they can learn a trade, culinary, you know, truck driving, etc. Get their high school diploma or GED. So again, these people sometimes just need another helping hand so they can get a job. Working with AutoZone is helping us out. Working with employers that will hire felons. Because if these people have jobs, they get a house or apartment, you know, they get a car, their chances of reoffending are slim to none, hopefully. People make mistakes. I made mistakes. I've been helped, and we're just offering help to our people, because every person that gets out of the justice system lowers crime. We get tax dollars, and we can get these people integrated back to the community. And that's our job. Public safety isn't just about arresting people. We need to do that, especially with this violent crimes spike we've had nationally, but affect us here, unfortunately. So these are just a couple of spokes to the wheel of justice, is helping people, arresting people, shooting people, arresting people, hurting our kids. Violent criminals need to be held accountable. Mm-hmm. This program is going to help people not be violent offenders, hopefully.
Little help. It's about a help. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. My guest is Hennepin County Sheriff. I'm so glad that he's here, Sheriff David P. Hutchinson. He's created a new initiative called Project HOPE, or HCSO HOPE. HOPE stands for helping others by providing education. And as he just said, the goal is to help break the cycle of incarceration by helping inmates create better opportunities for themselves. And so, how will students or inmates, I call them students already, that's probably better to call them students than inmates, but how will these inmates be transformed to see themselves and act as students learning? What's the mechanics of the program? How does it work?
Well, I think it's first and foremost, we get people in front of what their interests are. You know, when they get booked in, we'll ask them, do you want to be a part of this education program? Hopefully some people, or the most people, say yes. We're still asking for community help and business help with getting more Chromebooks. But 2 hours a day, they get to learn something they don't have past experience on.
And how does that happen? Is there a classroom in the jail?
There's a classroom in the jail. They'll have their Chromebooks assigned to them. They'll go through, we'll have a teacher from Minneapolis School District. We'll also have, teacher aides, and they're just going to help these people, hopefully get them excited about learning, because learning is fun. Sometimes it's been a while for us, but it can be a lot of fun. I read your bio, and you've pretty much been everywhere. And in 2018, you had a great honorable being such a powerful member of our society here locally and nationally. Again, we're going to have people like you hopefully come in and speak to the class. Superintendent of St. Louis Park School District is kind of a mentor. He's on our community advisory board. All these partnerships play a role because these people can get jobs. They can get stable housing. They can find a significant other, and they can be contributing people, members of society. And it's our job as public safety to help them become better. So they'll learn anything from, granted it's new, we're still evolving, but they'll learn, we're working with the truck drivers, we're working with Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, all these union jobs are hurting for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so really the plan is they're in 2 hours a day, they get to study whatever they want to study. And then after that, they'll be rewarded maybe with a tablet. They can do some media, watch a movie or what have you. So there's incentives to people. And I think with those incentives, I think people are going to do it, but then they're going to want to do it. So the incentives won't necessarily need it to be there. They still will, but people are going to be so excited when this program comes. And I do have to give a shout out to Sheriff Swanson from Genesee County, Michigan, the Flint area of Michigan. I met him at a conference and we talked about this. So his program is called Ignite. So we borrowed it, I like to say. And he was here for the press conference, and he's a very, very energetic, smart guy. So he's helping us. So not only Hudson County Sheriff's Office, but our neighbors in Michigan, we're all going to build a better society because, again, my job is to help people be better. My job is also to arrest bad guys and ladies. But if we help people on the front end and the back end, hopefully we have less criminals.
That's a wonderful vision, Sheriff. Let me sort of divert from the script for a little bit and give you the opportunity to ask you to talk about your work as a sheriff. You got a big organization and a lot of responsibility. And if you would just take a couple of minutes and acquaint our listeners with the mandate that you're operating with as chief law enforcement officer for Hennepin County. This is the second largest county in the state? Is the second, I think.
It's the largest. It's the largest actually by about 2.5 times. I always make sure I let Ramsey County know that.
Okay.
So we're actually the 17th largest office in the nation as well. People forget that. It's a big office.
Mm-hmm. So talk about the grand mission, what you were elected to do, and how you made the leap to put yourself in the line of service as a leader of the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department.
I think it all started my dedication to public service as a kid. My dad was a cop in the community I grew up, Burnsville. I saw how much giving back to society and what good cops can do. My dad he's retired, he's still alive, but he was probably one of the best cops I've ever met. I'm not just saying that because he's my father, but he held people accountable, but he treated people with respect. So I came into that, my law enforcement profession like that. Treat people how you want to be treated. It's pretty easy. Mm-hmm. We've gone through a bunch, as far as my work through working in a small town up by Stillwater, Bayport. I got hired at the transit police, spent 14, 15 years there, the last few as a supervisor. 10 years ago, I never thought I would be a sergeant or supervisor. But as soon as I got that position, I felt that leadership was important to me. I was good at it and I enjoyed it. And so I took the big leap to run for sheriff. And a lot of people laughed at me and said, "There's no way you can beat the former sheriff." And I said, "Well, I'm going to give it the best I can." And luckily enough, with hard work and maybe some faith involved, we won. And what we've done here, I first was try wellness, which is mind, body, and spirit. We're adding a financial component to it, but again, mind. We hired a therapist. Spirit is we have chaplains from different denominations. Body, we're working on our fitness. We all need to do better, including myself, and adding financial planning measure, because our young deputies and cops overall, their first decent paying job maybe, they put themselves in some financial strain where they have to work overtime, which makes them stressed and affects their family life. So we need to keep our people happy, healthy, and safe, so they're happy and healthy and safe when they're dealing with the public. Two people going through some crisis, or a depressed cop and a depressed citizen, their interactions are going to be poor, as we've seen. So we'll do our job, making sure our people are healthy so they can do their job, just to protect us, our organization, the people. And as far as, the last trying times, with the death and killing of George Floyd and some other issues, my office had been involved. It wasn't our officers, but with Minneapolis being in Hennepin County, we had to A, maintain order, B, help make changes. As a sheriff, I am the chief law enforcement officer, and Hennepin's very, very vast and different politically. Even you got Minneapolis and you got the suburbs, sometimes polar opposite ideologies when it comes to politics. But we have had steady, fast, strong leadership in some of the worst time in our community's history, not only just here, but nationally. We've gone through so much stuff and so much trauma our community has, and so have our deputies, and so have I, and so has my staff. So we're making sure that we make these changes. We talk about, police reform. I love calling it the evolution of policing. We're not perfect. We need to be better. This profession needs to evolve to the standard which the people want us to evolve in. So I listen to one person, 1.4, 1.3 million people are my bosses. If you live in Hennepin County, you're my boss. If you're an elected official throughout the county, you are not my boss. I don't have bosses but the people, and I think it's important. The last couple of years, we've been through a lot, but we've, again, maintained focus on the people. You see my pink badge. It's an issue we're doing for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We've been busy, but we're never too busy to get the patches here. We're never too busy to get back to our community, and the money from this will go to research and prevention. We did stuff for prostate cancer. We do all this stuff, and I just want people to know that while we're dealing with a lot uptick in violent crime, it's a national issue. It's just not our issue. It's a very severe issue. But that's why we need properly funded law enforcement and public safety agencies. We need to evolve our training. I had been county board 7-0 passed an initiative for a lot of money for this training facility in Maple Grove. In addition, de-escalation. It's going to have reality-based training. It's, we talk about implicit biases, because guess what? Cop is a human being. We watch the same Facebook and Instagram and TV and video games as the next person does. So we, unfortunately, have some biases, but we can work through those biases. We can cancel those biases out. So when we're in uniform and we deal with the public, whether you're black, white, gay, transgendered, part of the LGBT plus community, and you name it, a new American, an immigrant, the goal is to have public safety, keep you safe so you can do your job, you can go to school, you can live your life. And I'm most proud of just bringing some humanity to this office and showing people we hurt just like the rest of the community hurts sometimes too.
Let me give you some feedback, Sheriff. I want to thank you, first of all, for just being down to earth. I call it for real and sincere, and it's coming across to me. I'm hoping it's coming across to the listeners. I'm sure that it is. I'm Al McFarlane. You're listening to Conversations with Al McFarlane. My guest, Sheriff David P. Hutchinson, Sheriff of Hennepin County in Minnesota here in the Twin Cities, the largest county in the state. And Sheriff Hutchison, I heard you start off by saying that your focus is on mind, body, spirit, right, for your employees. And the thought is that if you are intentional and conscientious in attending to the mental health, the body health, the spiritual health and well-being of your workforce, your colleagues and your employees, people in your charge as workers, that you are able to bring them to their work of service in the community in and out of and through a posture of healing, not through a posture of hurt. And you said that you recognize that if people who are charged with responsibility are depressed or hurting, and then are dispatched to deal with people in community who are hurting and depressed, it's not a pretty sight. That's a recipe for everything going wrong, and often it does. And I hear you saying, Sheriff, that you believe that it's possible to have an approach, an attitude, an intentionality that strengthens and enables the people that you work with, that work for you, to show up in community differently, with a different motivation, or maybe it's not different, but to have their best motivation be more apparent, more visible, and more engaging. Am I saying that right? I'm hearing you the right way, Sheriff Hutchison?
Yes, sir. I think it's really important to note that the peacekeepers, which we take an oath to protect and serve. We all start in this profession. Most of us start in this profession. I would say over 98% start in this profession to help people. There's some, perks, nice to drive a car that can drive lights and sirens. There's some perks to it, but the most important thing is people get in this profession to help people. And then you get in this profession, and there's outside trauma, there's inside trauma, there's politics and within the agency. Lately, even just like if any profession, just like the dental profession 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people hated talking and going to the dentist.
Right.
And it affected them. They had a high suicide rate. The same thing, people are critiquing all of us for the actions of a few jerks that in our society locally and nationally that wear this uniform that have ruined it for us. And I'll tell you what, we don't like those people any more than the next person. What I do with this badge on my camera here is the opposite. It's not only for me, it's my dad. It's 30 years of profession, my coworkers. We know we aren't without sin. We've made mistakes, especially here locally. Mm-hmm. But we've done a lot of good, and we're still doing good because we're keeping public safety. Nice thing about being elected sheriff is I don't have city people telling me this, city people, mayor or city council or whoever. I listen to the community, what I think the community hears, and that's the whole community. I can't subsect any group of people. Mm-hmm. But when we're happy and healthy, I said it before, we're going to treat you better, be it in jail, be it on the water, be on a traffic stop on the highway, working safe zone downtown Minneapolis, helping with the U of M PD, Vikings, Twins games. You see my point. The last couple of years, we have done so much more as the sheriff's office has ever done because of Minneapolis and their loss of over a third of their officers. So we're doing all this, and guess what? It's stressful for me. It's stressful for my command staff, but it's stressful for the men and women who are showing up to do this job every single day. And if we're not helping them maintain some, normalcy in their life with their wife or husband or significant other, family, the community then fails because they're going to get an ornery, depressed, unhappy cop. When if we did our job as administration, and we're not going to appease everybody, but we could do, 5 deputies at a time. If we can just change it to saying, what can we do to help you? And if this job has burnt them up that bad, we can direct them to different jobs and then unions, etc. It all comes back to making sure we're happy and healthy. So the service you get and the people listening and watching get is 100% A-class to service that you deserve.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. My guest is Sheriff David P. Hutchison, Sheriff of Hennepin County, Minnesota. Sheriff Hutchison, are you experiencing the same turnover challenges as the city of Minneapolis? Minneapolis was and is the focus of the quote unquote reckoning or the unrest, or any way you want to call it, the fallout from the George Floyd killing, and also that compounded by the trauma created by COVID-19. And so we know that the politics and the feelings, and the positioning around so many of the Minneapolis Police Department officers taking early retirement, taking sick, and some of them just kind of getting fed up, with walking away because they feel they're unfairly castigated by a situation that they haven't created, that they've tried to operate in with a sense of integrity and fairness. So they're getting painted with a broad brush, some of them feel. Is that impacting your department, the sheriff's department, or is that local to the city of Minneapolis?
Sir, I think it's affecting departments nationally.
Okay.
We are getting affected. We have two different types of deputies. We have licensed deputies, or the people that can work in the jail or courts, but they're the ones with, carry a firearm. If they're in a position, they have a post license. And we have detention deputies, which are not licensed, civilian kind of people that just work in the jail, and they do a phenomenal job. But we're having a little difficulty with getting our numbers of detention deputies up.
Okay.
So we are going to, again, recruitment. We're going to change some education requirements. We're going to go look in places that we're not used to looking, go to high schools, go to colleges early on, all this stuff. And again, we've changed our policies with, facial hair and tattoos so we can recruit more people. But I think it's Minneapolis has had a fair share of issues. I think what they need in that agency is some leadership at the city level to say, yes, there needs to be changes. Yes, things aren't going as well as we like, but they go to hundreds of thousands of calls a year, and a few go bad, and we wish zero went bad.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to make sure we put that out there. Yes, if you're a cop and you violate policy and you break the law and you hurt or kill somebody, you're going to get fired and you're going to go to prison. But if you're a cop or a deputy who goes out there every single day and does their job to the best of their ability to protect the people we serve, those people we also have to kind of not on a high on a, hold them high, but just give them the respect that they deserve. And the bad ones will eventually get weeded out, even more so because the good cops are going to say, I don't want this jerk over here tarnishing what I work so hard for in this profession. And so the more good cops, the better we treat the good cops, the better we treat them, give them services they need. They're going to say, get out of here. We don't want your filth in this agency or this profession. That's how we fight it. We're not going to fight any other way, but making sure our good cops know they have our support when maybe it doesn't look good on World Star or YouTube or whatever, but in the main thing, we're actually out there helping. And I think the more we praise and support the good cops, the more bad cops are going to leave this profession. And, just talking about diversity a little bit, I think is important. Up this year, we're at 32.1% diverse or female detention deputies, 13% for licensed deputies, and 20% of our overall staff has improved diversity that much, because diversity is not only a necessity now because we have to meet the community we serve, but we're recruiting more young deputies of color, immigrants, females, because we want, again, we need them because we're short, but also we want to make sure that they know this profession is an honorable profession still. And the way we make changes is changing things from the inside. We don't make changes from complaining on Facebook, as you know, through all your stuff you've accomplished. I, again, read your bio, so I'm impressed.
Well, thank you. I'm impressed with you as well. I want to thank you and all of your colleagues and all of the men and women in law enforcement for, what you do is absolutely essential. And I, for one, believe and know that having effective and empathetic leaders in that critical profession is so important. I have been known, Sheriff, to be an advocate of military service. I'm a former Navy guy, and when I was a kid, 19 and dumb and stupid and crazy, right? But having a good time at it. I had the fortune to be in the Navy for a couple of years and 2 years of active duty, then reserve duty after that. But looking back over the years now, I value and treasure that growing experience and the chance to now say that I did something in the service of the country, in the community. And I want to extend to you that same kind of appreciation and respect and support, so that you're comfortable with me telling Black kids in my family that, you know what, there's an opportunity for you to be a sheriff or to be a police officer. I do have a cousin, a nephew who's in the Minneapolis Police Department doing a good job. I have a first cousin that was with the Minneapolis Police Department, is now with the BCA up in White Earth or Bemidji, that area. And so there is this commitment and willingness to be of service in my family. And I think that every family ought to have somebody in the profession, somebody in the court system, in counseling and therapy, in the law field, in the detention services, in the food services, supporting the people that find themselves incarcerated, because the incarceration is a temporary thing. You pass through it, and hopefully it's part of your growing and moving towards becoming your best self again, because you learn some things, right? And that the experience doesn't typecast you forever. It doesn't have to. And I really appreciate the fact that you're doing with the HOPE program, reflecting that people can always grow. Growth is always at hand. It's a question of having access to the resources, the training, and this intention that supports your dignity and your potential as a human being. So thank you so much for doing all that you do. I want to also acknowledge what you said. When you ran for sheriff and won, that was an upset. It was a shocker. You shocked the world. And congratulations again. I had to tell you that because I knew your predecessor and I called us friends. But you came from the outside and made it happen. Congratulations. What are your thoughts looking back on that? What are your thoughts about how you did that?
I appreciate it. Well, I think just people, I'm not the most polished politician. I don't tell people what they want to hear. I'll tell people what they have to hear. I'm a down-to-earth guy, like you said. I'm pretty chill. I treat people the same as I did when I was riding buses on the north side as a transit cop in the middle of the night. Hard work, some luck, but again, I worked my butt off. I sacrificed a lot because I thought that I could do a better job. And while my predecessor did some good things, I think we have improved the sheriff's office. It's not perfect, but every day we strive to make it better. We're hiring too. So if you have any family members or friends, we're hiring. This is a great place to work. Any government agency has its hiccups, but I think as a large sheriff's office, this was a good place to work. We treat people with respect and we get respect. And I think just common decency, as you know, sir, this goes a long way. We don't have to have the same ideals or political beliefs, but I'm going to respect your opinion, have mine. But at the end of the day, the sheriff is responsible for keeping the peace in the county. I don't care who you subscribe to politically. If you're in Hennepin County for work, vacation, if you live here, you're going to get the best public service that I can offer with the resources I have available. I promise that.
Absolutely amazing. Well, Sheriff Hutchinson, thank you. Let me remind people that we started off talking about the new program. It's called the HOPE program. HOPE stands for helping others by providing education. The sheriff has announced a new program to help people get a high school diploma or a GED, to help them get adult enrichment classes, even things that lead to financial literacy, virtual reality trade skills training, employment preparation, voter education, and also to have access to community support services like chemical dependency programs and trade skills and manufacturing instruction, also second chance employment programming, employment training. And so it's an extension of a vision of how this department and this mission can better serve people in the public. Sheriff, I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, sir.
And you're welcome to come back anytime. Let's do this
I was
again.
just going to say, this is the most fun I've had in an interview in a long time. I would love to come back.
We'll make it
anytime
happen.
you want me.
Great. Well, I'm loving the interview, and I want to thank you so much. I think my listeners are loving it too, and we'll do this again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'm Alan McFarlane. This is Conversations with Alan McFarlane. And as I said, today is really special. That was a wonderful interview. I loved it. I'm so glad to have the chance to talk to the sheriff and, to have that conversation as a Black man wanting to be able to talk about our responsibility for peace in our community at a time when our community and the community at large, we all see ourselves under siege. Part of the pandemic, part of the reckoning, part of the transition in thinking, part of the new social media age that is disruptive in certain ways. A lot is going on, but there is a lot of opportunity for us to center ourselves as individuals and as families and as neighbors, and to be intentional about creating safe, productive, livable, sustainable, and life-affirming relationships and communities. So that's really important. I want to go next to bring two more guests into the conversation. Joining me to talk about the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and their Delta Phi Omega chapter, and the educational foundation is called the Ivy Foundation, Inc. of Minnesota. They're presenting the 2021 Pearls of Prestige Debutante Coalition. It's a program that's going to culminate with a biennial ball. The ball is going to be Saturday, October 23rd at 6 p.m. And we're going to talk about that, what the debutante ball is and how it's going to happen this year, and about the mission and vision of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority and their chapter here. So I'm pleased to have Mary Dido Swinton join me first. Ms. Swinton, good to see you. Good afternoon. How are you?
I am wonderful, and I appreciate this opportunity to join you today to talk about not only our sorority and chapter, but this outstanding event that we do have coming up in the community next weekend.
Well, let's start with that. Let's talk about that first, and then we'll come back to it again and again over the course of the next minutes that we're going to be talking together here. But first of all, thank you for being here and being on the program, and we thank you more broadly for the work of the sorority of your organization, and it's an important work for our people, for our culture, and for our community. So I'm going to get into all of that with you, but talk about the event next weekend first of all.
Well, the event next weekend is our Pearls of Prestige Debutante Cotillion, and we are going to be showcasing 18 outstanding young ladies from various areas of the Twin Cities who have gone through months of leadership development training. They've done personal development training, and this is just our time to highlight their accomplishments and introduce them to the community.
And so what does it mean to have a debutante ball? Explain that to me.
Well, debutante cotillions have really been part of the Black community for decades.
Now, am I wrong in calling it a ball, or should it be called a cotillion?
The actual event can be called a ball, but
okay.
We are referring to it as a cotillion. It's the whole program that it encompasses when you say cotillion. So for our chapter, this is actually our second biennial cotillion. It's our first live streamed and virtual cotillion, which, obviously we're in COVID times. So this allows us to adhere to not only our Alpha Kappa Alpha corporate restrictions, but also CDC guidelines, the city of Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota, and all that, so we can keep our young ladies and the debutantes safe. But debutante cotillions go back for decades. They're very well known in the Black community, and the Twin Cities was actually fortunate enough to have an annual cotillion that was hosted for 3 decades by another historically Black women's organization, the Links Incorporated. And Delta Phi Omega chapter reintroduced the program and presented more than 20 young ladies in the winter of 2019. So this is just a continuation of this excellence for us.
Well, I can tell you that I'm the proud dad of two debutantes. Two of my daughters were debutantes back in the day, and so I'm familiar from the personal side with the experience, and as a parent, how much it meant to me and my wife, Bobby Ford McFarlane, that our daughters, Celine and Batala, were both debutantes. And, it's a learning. I mean, the parents learn. We meet parents that we didn't know, and we support our children meeting other children that that have become lifelong friends now in the past 20 years. So talk more about the why. Why is this tradition so important in the Black community?
Well, for the things that you've listed, this is an opportunity for families to grow together. These young ladies have participated in workshops in lots of different fields, including careers in STEM, financial literacy, college preparedness, philanthropy, which is important. And so they've had a time to bond doing things like learning a waltz. The father and the daughter learned a waltz. We had the mother-daughter tea where the daughters were able to express their love and their devotion to their mothers and what their mothers meant to them, and vice versa, the mothers to the daughters. So it's really an engaging, but it's also an emotionally touching activity that, as you said, the whole family learns and grows and becomes closer through.
Talk about your organization, Alpha Kappa Alpha.
Oh, I love talking about Alpha Kappa Alpha. So some of us may know, Alpha Kappa Alpha was founded in 1908 by 16 undergraduate students on the campus of Howard University. And what we are doing today is built in our sorority's mission to cultivate and encourage high scholastic and ethical standards, to promote unity and friendship among college women, to study and help alleviate problems concerning girls and women in order to improve their social statures, to maintain a progressive interest in college life, and to be of service to all mankind. And here in the Twin Cities, Delta Phi Omega chapter also has a rich history of service and scholarship. One of our chapter charter members, Miss Beatrice Shook Reed Bailey, who served as president of the chapter multiple times and served in many offices. But upon her death, her wish was that any gifts be used for scholarship. And so in 1982, Delta Phi Omega endowed a fund at Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority's Educational Advancement Foundation on this 60th anniversary of our chapter. And we continue to provide a scholarship through that Beatrice Bailey Fund. And so in addition, Alpha Kappa Alpha scholarship and enrichment have always been a part of our program platforms, and under the leadership of our current international president and CEO, Dr. Glenda Glover, our Educational Advancement Foundation over the past 3.5 years, just 3.5 years, has raised nearly $10 million for scholarships dedicated to historically Black colleges and universities, or HBCUs. And $2 million of that was raised in one day this past month. In one day, $2 million was raised. And this is all going to endowed funds at 50 historically Black colleges and universities. So I feel like what we're doing here in Minnesota all feeds into the sorority's goals as a whole, which are focused on education and scholarship and betterment.
Now, if I'm correct, you've got a fairly, not a fairly, but a super famous member of the sorority in a position of power on planet Earth.
Yes.
Talk about that if you would.
Well, yes, you may have heard of Vice President Kamala Harris. She is our sorority sister. But what really, other than the fact that we are very proud of her accomplishments, what it has done, one of the major things it has done is brought attention to our HBCUs again. She is a graduate of Howard University, and it's highlighted in addition what women are capable of doing. You know, we're in this circle now that we have not been in before, both as an African American woman and a graduate of an HBCU. So we are very proud of Vice President Kamala Harris and what that means for our nation.
Let me introduce a colleague of yours. I'm glad she's able to join us as well. Dr. Cheryl Anderson is the Cotillion Debutante Coordinator. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane.
Thank you, Mr. McFarlane. I am so pleased to be able to join you today, along with the president of our chapter, Mary Dito Swinton. Thank you so much.
Well, please call me Al, and thank you for being here. So let me just have you take a minute to, again, sort of review the mechanics of holding a virtual cotillion this year. How's it going to work?
Well, there are a lot of works that has required just numerous members of our organization to come together first in planning. And as Mary has mentioned before, we have had months of time with the young ladies, walking them through those important areas that we know will be relevant for their future and their use as well as today. And so then as we progressed through that program virtually, we were able to also establish rapport. That was one of our challenges that we thought, everybody is zoomed out. I mean, how many meetings can we all have via Zoom? But at the same time, we really took a thoughtful effort to say, how do we want to ensure that the girls get to know each other? So before we started any workshop, they had time that was just for them. And that was important and special. And you could see how their relationship grew over the months of being together. So then as we then entered the readiness for the cotillion, and after making the decision that it would be a virtual cotillion, we really had to first involve the moms and the dads and to explain our reasoning, but also what the work would be like to be involved in that. We've never done this before. And then as a result, we had a lot to learn, and we could not have done it if it had not been for teamwork, collaboration, communication, and so many other resources that we're able to put together. I can talk more about the detail of that, but I think I just wanted to set that up first.
Well, you have time to talk about the details. I mean, that's why we're here. I do want to remind you to invite people to support and to join. That's important. One of the reasons that you're here is to let the public know that there's a part they can play. Talk about that first, and then let's keep going.
Absolutely. On October 23rd, Saturday, beginning at 6 o'clock prompt, the doors will open, if you will, virtually. Those persons who have access will be able to first enter and see our website. And the website is dedicated just to our debutantes and our cotillion program. You'll find a greeting from our invited MC, Shayla Reeves from WCCO, and she will be our live MC for the entire event. Thereafter, we will be following an order of program that is typical of any traditional debutante program. There will be a formal introduction of each young lady, her accomplishments and her goals and aspirations, and why we want to showcase them to this community. Thereafter, as has been mentioned, there will be the waltz. There just wouldn't be a cotillion without a waltz. And so the young ladies, along with their escorts, will also then do 2 dances. After that, then
Now, how's that going to happen? They're going to be actually at a ballroom.
No.
Tell me.
No. In this virtual environment, we've had to learn things differently, right?
Okay.
And so we had to safely do a pre-recording of the actual dances. I can't even tell you about the rehearsals, again, making sure that safety was always first and foremost, and how we had to do that in small teams, small units. They relied on videos. The choreographer was absolutely fantastic in working with them online, offline. And then all of that just came together with the art of technology through our videography group, Creative Images. And so we're just really excited about what it's going to look like together, because at the end of the day, it does reflect a number of interactions and units that came together to make it happen. You'll be pleased and you'll be surprised as well.
Well, my imagination is being piqued. Now I'm just trying to figure this out. So it sounds exciting. I'll make sure that I'm there. You know, and I'm glad that you've taken this approach to acknowledge the challenges to public safety and public health, and that you've been creative and imaginative and committed still to ensuring that the value of the experienced is not lost, that we still have that as a community, because it's critical, it's essential to our I think our sense of culture, sense of health and well-being in families and beyond. Let's see. So how many young ladies are involved this year, and how do you choose people to become involved in the cotillion each year?
Nice. Thank you for that question. It's great. We did a call out to the community to invite them to submit for application, the young ladies who met our criteria. We established that criteria, as has been done for other types of cotillions, and communicated that. We didn't know, because it was a time of pandemic then as well, what would be the response. Well, we did get a response that we really just didn't know what happened, and it did. And so then from there, we had an interview process. The young ladies completed an application, an essay, submitted transcripts to demonstrate their readiness to meet the standards that we had set. The selection committee then determined those young ladies who would participate. And then from there, we have progressed forward. At this point, we will be presenting on October 23rd at 6:00 p.m. 18 beautiful junior and high school African-American girls who really epitomize the excellence and exemplify grace, as well as just savvy. They are just such wonderful young ladies. So that was the process by which we were able to get these girls involved in the program.
So some of the listeners today might believe that, the cotillion may not be relevant in these days, in this age and time, or the cotillion could be perceived as an elitist concept for families that are, quote unquote, in the upper middle income bracket. So talk about that perception, what the basis of it might have been, what the reality is today, and how you see the power of this. I think it's an institution, what role it'll play in the advancement of our families, of our young women, and of our community.
Right. President Mary, do you want to address that first, and then I'll tag on?
I'll jump in first. So these young ladies come from a wide range of economic backgrounds. And throughout the process, they've been in touch with a mentor who has been alongside them to help guide and offer tips and be a person to go to during this process. And so the workshops, in addition, the workshops were developed to help equip these young women in school and higher learning, in their future jobs and in life. And so those are not things that are elitist. Those are things that are needed by any young person in society today. And so there are no income brackets as a requirement to participate in this cotillion. So it truly is open to any young woman who is interested in self-bettering. Self-improvement and being engaged and involved. So I understand the sentiment perhaps, but if you really take a dive into what this cotillion program has provided, I think that you would realize it's not an elitist institution.
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
I would just add that we are not ashamed of having African American girls, junior and seniors in high school, who are elite by what they bring and the characteristics that they possess, as well as their scholastic achievement, their community service, their ability to articulate what their goals and aspirations are, and how they want to do that, and how this program not only can benefit them, but also the community through the scholarships that will be awarded, through the funds that will be raised. So we're not ashamed of this being an elevation of an elite group of young ladies. The other part that we're also important to also at least be respectful that the position of Black women in America can also be filled with challenges. And so then those challenges then require that we prepare young girls for the challenges that they will face, not only how to face them, but how to address them, how to manage and navigate around them as well. And so any opportunity that any organization has to lift up a Black girl who would become a Black woman, it is the right thing to do. So we do hold that these young ladies are elite, and we're so proud of them.
That's wonderful to hear. And I think that too often we fail to acknowledge what I call the gifts within ourselves, or particularly within our children. And I think that one of the things that you do is you recognize that every child that connects and joins brings massive gifts with her in this case, into the universe, and that your role as adults and as leaders and as an organization is to both ensure and help polish and help develop that capability, that skill, and the confidence that this child will bring into her mission of changing the world and of crafting, of authoring a future that is better for our families and for our people and for humanity. And so I think that's a powerful both responsibility, but one that your organization and the other, I call them Greek organizations, if I'm wrong, correct me, have undertaken. And I salute you and applaud you for that. I often ask my guests to give me their personal stories, because generally everybody I talk to at one level or another is driven, and that's driven to be the best, to succeed, to share, to create, to lead, to be accountable, to be transparent. So in that spirit, Mary Dido Swinton, I wanted to ask you to take a minute to talk about who you are and what brought you here.
Well, that's a great question.
Well,
See,
I know
I'm
it's
buying
not in
myself
the not in the script. So,
no, seriously though, who I am, I have devoted the last 3 decades of my life to community service, literally. I chose when my children were very young to leave the workforce and to focus on my family. But in that, I realized that I had the privilege and the opportunity to give back to my community. And that is what I've done through lots of organizations. My favorite of which is Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. And the great thing about AKA is we are everywhere. And so I've been able to take the skills and the talents that I have developed to different communities in those 30 years. But I'm someone who is concerned about my community's current state, and I'm concerned about our future state. And so everything that I do feeds into that concern. So that's who I am.
are you a native of Minnesota, or where are you
I
from?
am not a native. I am a native of Houston, Texas.
All right, all right. So let me stir this pot a little more, because I always say that our people, really proudly and rightfully can show and say that we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, our moms and dads and grands and people in the community. So in that spirit, how would you describe your lineage, your family line that brought you to be the Mary Dido that you have brought to the world?
I'm proud of my lineage and my family. My mother was a school teacher for 40 years. She taught second graders for 30 of those years. She was a committed and devoted member of her church. She didn't even look at herself as a volunteer because we weren't really programmed. We were programmed to see volunteers as, pardon me, but middle-aged white ladies out, feeding hungry people. But my
Sure.
mother was a volunteer at her church. My mother was a Girl Scout leader. Any child who needed something, my mother was there for that kid. And her mother was the same. And so those are the immediate shoulders that I stand on. I had an example of women who worked for their communities. And let me throw this in also. My mother had 6 kids. So she got out and she did her community service as her job as a teacher, which is what I look at that now. And then she came home and she worked for the rest of the community, her family, her neighbors, her friends, her church members. And she got that from her mother, who got that from her mother. And so that's my family lineage. I've just had the privilege of not having a quote unquote 9 to 5. And so it's given me the opportunity to give of myself even more. But those are the women whose shoulders I stand on.
That's such a powerful testimony. Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson. Same question to you. As you reflect on, your own identity and your story and your family, what comes to mind?
Wow. I have to tag on, though, that I'm a Texan as well, originally. And my parents were both educators, and they certainly are the ones who shaped me. My mother, also a school teacher who progressed to be a principal, and then ultimately a school was named for her for the work that she did in the community. My father was a football coach, and he moved on to become the assistant athletic director for the Fort Worth schools. And now there's a football field that's named for him. So I just view that my parents weren't ones that were looking for accolades and those kinds of things. But I think when people see your work, they want to recognize your work. And so the service that they gave in the community throughout, I mean, we were drugged to church. We were drugged to the community center activities. We were drugged to sit down and be quiet while they did their work and watch them, my brother and I. And so those are the things that mark who I am, my character, the things that I value and find important. And then also I had the privilege of having so many women that were actually, I would say, selected to deposit in my life through my mother, church, different organizations, this sorority, and others that really were instrumental in shaping me to be who I am today.
We're out of time. This has been a wonderful conversation. It goes so quickly. I want to thank you so very, very much for what you're doing and for your willingness to share, impromptu, your personal story. I think that what you both have shared is inspiring, but it's also, it tells you who we are. I think that your stories are the stories of our people, right? They're what define us, and some of us get closer to the mark and some are farther away, but this is our essential, essence, I believe, and you all stand to reflect and demonstrate the power of that in your work today, your life today. So thank you so very, very much. Take one last second, Dr. Anderson, and people can register to be at the event. How do they do it, and when's the deadline for that?
They would do that by going to the online website at AKA Cotillion. Wait, AKA DPO.com, AKA DPO.com.
Okay.
And from there, then they would be able to register and obtain tickets for this event.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Let me say to the station, if you have top of the hour station ID, this is a good time to do it because we've got more guests coming up in just a second. I think we're going to go next with the next hour. Again, thanks to Lady J for asking me to step in to give her a break for a day, and I gladly accepted the offer to take the 2-hour window that she does to bring to you this conversation about important, critical, cultural, and political issues. In the next couple of hours, we're going to talk to candidates for city council in Minneapolis. We're going to talk, to begin with, though, about a couple of the important ballot questions. The first of which will be the hot topic about defund the police reform. And we're going to have Sister Minister Janae Bates taking one position on that, and another position taken by Reverend Jerry McAfee. But first, we're going to do a 90-second break, and we'll join you again to get into this conversation with candidates. Plus, then at the 3 o'clock hour, we're going to have candidates for mayor, for sure. Mayor Melvin Carter will be with us talking about his election bid in St. Paul. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you in 90 seconds.
There'll be no rich, there'll be no poor. Classism will be no more. There will be no more racial war. They will respect us for who we are. The greedy man's well will run dry, and he will watch his children cry. And he now knows just how it feels to go to bed without a meal. Yeah. One day, oh, one day, children, we will watch when the tables turn. One day, oh, one day, children, we will watch when the tables turn. Babylon borders will fall. We'll build bridges, no more war, and the world will be as one. Equal rights for every man. The Middle East will free from war, and the children free from scar. No more health crisis in Africa. No more racism in America. One day, oh, one day, children, we will watch when the tables turn. One day, oh, one day, children, we will watch when the tables turn. One day, the first becomes the last. The slow becomes the fast. The future will become the past. Giant trees will spring from grass. One day, oh, one day, children, we will watch when the tables turn. Hey. One day, oh, one day, children, we will watch when the tables turn.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome back to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Today, a special opportunity to go deep on critical issues. We want to thank our friend and colleague, Lady J, wishing her well, first of all, a little under the weather, needed a break, and asked me if I'd take on her time slot today. More than happy to accommodate. There's so much I want to share with you. And one of the things I want to talk about is all of the candidates for office in Minneapolis and St. Paul that have an opportunity to bring their story, their case, their request of you to support them in their bid to be elected. And we know that also in Minneapolis, there are several major critical ballot initiatives. And I've asked representatives of the several positions to come on board and talk about the three major ballot initiatives that are going to be on the ballot today. I see my friend and colleague, Reverend Jerry McAfee, is here. And before I have you talk, Reverend McAfee, I want to let people know that you're going to be doing a debate tonight. It's a debate on the proposal to replace the police department with a new section, or called the Department of Public Safety. And the press release went out, said that the debate tries to provide clarity amid confusion. So what I want to do today is ask you and one of the people that is supporting the initiative, this is item number 1 on the ballot, to give a brief synopsis of what the ballot seeks to do and why you either support or do not support it. I'm going to read real quickly the question on the ballot. It's question number 2. And just let me put my notes here together. And it's called the Department of Public Safety. The city council must establish, organize, and otherwise provide for these departments, and it lists a number of departments. And the long and short of it is that this is being presented as a way to shift the police department from the control of the mayor to the new city Department of Public Safety run by the city council. If I have that right, Jerry McAfee, thank you for being here. Am I saying that the right way? Is that a proper description?
No.
Okay.
Two interesting words, Al, that I would insert that the document says. It says it could include licensed law enforcement. And then the other part talks about if necessary. And then the other part in the explanatory notes that is utterly shocking is that if it passes, the city council and the mayor will come up with a public safety department with an emphasis on public health. You ain't never seen no place in the United States of America where that is done. Now, think about this, Al. You have, since George Floyd, over 140 some people killed, over 800 and some people shot. You got 8,700 shots fired in Minneapolis alone. Do we need to hear language like could and if necessary? We won't even talk about the fact that 88% of these people that's dying is African American. And then let's not talk about the fact that, they used to say, well, you create fear. Well, I look in the eyes of the people that's dying. Now, you said something a while ago, Al, that says volumes about this debate. You said you've known me for how long?
Long time.
What generating them come from? That they would articulate these things on behalf of a community that they don't know. Well, we need to find out who's behind them. Isaiah is behind them. Black Visions Collective is behind them. Everything that has been against, especially the African American man, that's what is behind them. And so if the polling says to you 75% of African Americans don't want it, why you black folk doing it? You mean to tell me y'all don't think we know anything? And let me say this, and I'll be through with my particular portion, because the other day our dear sister made the mistake of saying that Anthony Boozer was a good force in the life of the police department for us. I see you smiling that too, because if you listen to me, get some more information. You need to go read 82 and 85, where Anthony Boozer said wasn't no gangs. And he castigated Spike Moss, who was talking about trying to get ahead of the violence, much like what y'all are trying to do with us now with Isaiah. Y'all need to rethink it. Do we need reform? Oh, no question. And we've been working on the reform. We're at a place now, Al, where all of the mechanisms that we need for proper reform is there. And they want to fight it now that it's finally here.
And some say that the fight includes removing the police chief. We finally have an African-American, a black man who's from here, leading the police department. Some say this is a side shot at him as well.
No doubt. Man, this is more than likely just a setup to put it in the hands of city council people who think they're going to win. And the major insult is, if you really want to do something for us, you should not be so vague in what you desire. Just say it plain. And they are vague. It's almost like a bad sermon that has no central theme.
On and on. Jerry McAfee, thank you so much. And I'm expecting that Janae Bates will join the call in a second or two. And if she does, I'll bring her on. But I promised you that we just take a few minutes and use this opportunity to promote the event tonight. So let me do that. Tonight, it's a live debate on Minneapolis City ballot question number 2 on whether to replace the Minneapolis Police Department with the Department of Public Safety. The debate features Reverend Jerry McAfee and Minister Janae Bates, radio host from CCO, Geraldine Steele. It's tonight, October 12th at 6 p.m. at North High School Auditorium, 1500 James Avenue North, and available online, almost on Facebook and YouTube. So, Reverend McAfee, thank you so much. Appreciate your voice.
Brother. And thank you for having us here, and thank you for your depth of knowledge, past, present, and future.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Kelvin, is Janae here yet? Is she in the audience yet? And if she's not, what I want to do is bring in some of the city council members just to weigh in on this and other questions as well. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. And as I indicated, we got an extra couple of hours today. Basically, I say with thanks to Lady J, but I also want to say I hope she's getting better. She's a little under the weather and wanted to just chill out for a second. I think it's a good decision. I'm happy and pleased to be able to stand in for her and to use this opportunity to bring these conversations to you. The issue is the political landscape, and I've invited several of the candidates who join me on Mondays for my Facebook Live program come today to talk about their candidacies. I see Kathy Spann is here, and I also see that Mickey Moore is here. If there are other candidates in the back room now, bring them on the front, Kelvin, and when they come in, just bring them in. We'd be glad to bring him into the conversation. I see Abdirizak Bihi is joining the call as well. What I want to do is ask and invite each of these candidates to introduce themselves to this audience here on KFAI. Talk about yourself, your mission, your vision, your platform, and why you want to serve people in the ward that you're seeking to be elected from. I'm going to begin with Kathy Spann. Kathy Spann is a candidate for 5th Ward in North Minneapolis. Kathy, good afternoon. Unmute and take about 5 minutes to talk about who Kathy Spann is and why you want to be elected to 5th Ward in North Minneapolis.
Excellent. Thank you for this opportunity, Al. And I'm super excited. This is an amazing time for our city. We are at a crossroads. We are really at a time where lots of people are sitting at the table and making decisions on behalf of others. I am Kathy Spann. I'm running for 5th Ward City Council. I have lived, worked, and worshiped in North Minneapolis for over 25 years. I'm currently the executive director at Jordan Area Community Council. I've been there for the past 10 years of my career. And I am running for the Fifth Ward City Council because our community faces the worst disparities across the country. I'm running not just for my ward, but I'm running to be of service to residents of the city of Minneapolis. Black Americans face the worst disparity among all individuals, Black, Indigenous people, and people of color. It was ranked in the USA Today in 2017 or 18. I think they reported that Minneapolis, Bloomington, and St. Paul is the worst place for Black Americans to live. And so I am running because, you know what? Time is now, and it's no more business as usual. My community that I live and work and love so dearly has been neglected. $1.599 billion is a budget that has been proposed for 2022. I am dissecting that budget to see what portion of that budget is really going to assist the disparities that really is with Black, Indigenous people and people of color face in this community. In the Jordan neighborhood where I work, I'm going to say and tell you it's horrendous. We face a pandemic of violence. 15%, 30% of the population that live in Jordan and Hawthorne actually make less than $15,000 a year. That should not exist. Not exist. I am putting together a 100-day plan that simply says I want to meet with the department heads of the CPED department, the department heads of the health department, the civil rights department, and the housing department, because those are the key departments at the city of Minneapolis that are failing this community. This community has been failed by all of the city of Minneapolis, but there are 21 departments and they owe us. Each and every one of them owe us as citizens, as residents of this community. I am excited about the opportunity to be of service to people. And I really want to represent the everyday person because I'm an everyday person. I work 9 to 5. I have raised my children in this community and I love this community and I'm not going anywhere. So what it change is now and it's needed. There is no other time. The time is now. And the reality is we are no longer accepting business as usual. That no longer will exist in our community. That's why I'm running for Fifth Ward City Council.
Kathy Span, 2 questions. One, we just heard from Reverend Jerry McAfee speaking in opposition to the ballot question number 2. We hope to hear from Janae Bates to speak in support of that. But what are your thoughts? Where do you stand on the question of reform or restructure? They haven't used this word lately, but it started off as being abolish the police. So I think I've not heard that being said as much as it was at the beginning. But what are your thoughts?
As many of you know, I initiated the lawsuit last year, 2020, to sue the city of Minneapolis, and 7 of my friends and neighbors joined me. We are the Minneapolis 8. We sued the city of Minneapolis for violating the charter. They actually do not have enough police, and we won that lawsuit. So by next year, believe it's May or June, they need to have sufficient amount of police officers. But this is where I stand. In 2019, Hennepin County actually implemented a pilot project, 911 embedded social workers and embedded social workers at the police department. All of these cities, Bloomington, Plymouth, Minnetonka, Brooklyn Park, Hopkins, St. Louis Park, were all at the table to implement this project. Why wasn't Minneapolis at the table in 2019? I have constantly asked that question. They implemented this project so they could redirect non-emergency calls that could go to a different department where they had mental health staff, where they had social workers that could address some of the issues so that police did not have to respond to every situation. Why wasn't Minneapolis at the table? Pilot project, that's what I support. I support embedding social workers in the police department, embedding the 911 social worker program. I support partnership. The city of Minneapolis is not doing a good job at partnership with the county. They are not good at partnership with the state. And that's it. We are not a standalone entity. We should work together as teams, as a team. That's why the city is failing.
You're telling voters to vote yes or no on
I'm telling
ballot
voters
question.
to vote no.
Okay. What about ballot question number 1? And that determines the relative power between the city council, you running for that seat, and the mayor. What are your thoughts on that?
The mayor, we do need a strong mayor system. I would vote yes on that. But it is also going to be dependent on who the mayor is, because I don't know if I could work along a person that wants to defund or dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department. That would be very hard for me as a city council person. But you know what? I believe that we do need to have a strong mayor system. It's got to be. And the city council should be more of a legislative body. And we have just failed in every sense of the measure. We have failed the citizens of this city.
Third question that you can respond to quickly, rent control. What are your feelings about that for our community?
I have a hard time with rent control, but I can tell you this. I grew up in subsidized housing. More so am I for rent control. I am really for subsidized housing. I really have a hard time with rent control because number one, there is no plan of how you're going to implement rent control. Who's going to be grandfathered in? How does it impact new construction? How does it impact the mom and pop who only owns a duplex? How is it going to impact us? And there is no plan for that. I could support it if I knew the plan, but I do support subsidized housing. I do support affordable housing because I grew up in the Robert Brooks row houses of Chicago. So I am a product of subsidized housing. So I support that.
Thank you, Kathy Spann. Kathy Spann is a candidate for Fifth Ward. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. And today we're having a special 2-hour extension of our broadcast. And in those 2 hours, giving us a chance to connect with people that want to serve you, that want your vote. They're running for the city council seats in the city of Minneapolis. Later today, we'll talk to Mayor Melvin Carter of St. Paul, and perhaps we'll get some of the candidates for the mayor's office in Minneapolis as well. And then I've got a couple of experts coming on at 3:30 talking about the amendments. So it's going to be a good program. Stick with me. Today, I want to keep focusing on city council. And who's not been with me before, but I've got a long history with, is Abdirizak Bihi. And Abdirizak Bihi is a candidate for 6th Ward in Minneapolis. Brother Bihi, good afternoon. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Let me ask you to take 4 or 5 minutes to talk about yourself and why you are running to fill a seat on the city council for the city of Minneapolis.
Hi, Al. It's good to see you always. And I want to say, really, our friendship started back a long time ago when the community, Somali American community and the East African community, were coming in as refugees with nothing. And you were one of the board members and the elders on this Confederation of Somali Community Organization. That was the pipeline to help people find housing, ESL classes, jobs. So you have been through with us this struggle for a long, long time. I'm glad to say back then in 1995 or 6, I believe 6, I started civic engagement in the community for people to vote because of their background. They fled from dictatorship, then from a civil war. So they were afraid of government. And I remember working with you, getting the vote out, asking people to vote. And I remember the first election was 56 people. Today, thanks for your work, partnership, and eldership in the community, we're talking about thousands and thousands of voters that are eager. I also want to say how proud I am that Ward 6 always leads the early vote in our city. So those East African immigrants play a great role of getting the vote out. As I speak to you right now, we are helping people transport to early votes, especially elders and anyone who needs a ride. Yes, my name is Abdirizak Bihi. I have lived in the Riverside neighborhood, the colorful high rises, for almost half of my life with my family, past 24 years. And those 24 years, I've been an organizer, activist, social work provider. Last 10 years, I have been concerned lack of opportunities for young people and families. So I partnered with Emerge Community Development Summit Academy, where I try to help bridge the gap that the baby boomers are leaving behind with their skills. They're retiring, and by 2020, 2040, we'll be in a bad shape in terms of finding skilled labor. So my partnership with those ICs and Emerge has produced free trainings for the community in construction, in electrician, carpentry, highway equipment, machining, being plus about CDL drivers, which is the hardest program that the Merge provides in the community, Cedar Riverside Opportunity Center. We have done so many classes that we have produced. In my neighborhood, there are about 780 from last year that operate or own, they're owning semi that work across the continent, including the woman with hijab. So it's a big business. Trainings and investing in the community that has 20 or 25% unemployment is very helpful. Such programs that we have done in the past with Emerge is IT. I know a young person in my high rises that used to work as a security officer with $11.75 and took the program for 3 months within the high rises paid for by the city of Minneapolis and Emerge and ended up getting a job for $78,000. That's how career programming and skills building helps our communities, and that's one of the reasons I'm running to invest. Um, in this community, in Ward 6, we have a lot of high rises, public housing, and a lot of those elders or people with physical or other health challenges who live there are worried. They're really worried to death because they're afraid of privatization. They don't want to be gentrified. They want to stay in their homes. And one of the reasons I'm running is to make sure that those low income public housing units stay with Minneapolis Public Housing Agency. We're also running because opioid crisis is killing our youth in the community. It's shameful that we have $0 to invest in young people in our communities. We have community centers that are empty, such as Brian Coyle Community Center and many others in Ward 6, where the young people are on the street, simply not because we don't want to help them. There are no dollars, $0, no after school programs, no after school activities. Um, uh, if, say, a Hennepin County Library or see the Riverside Opportunity Center or Emerge, they can only take few students. We need to expand investing in young people. We need to create treatment centers, culturally competent for Native American and the East African communities. We need to do outreach and educational programs for families. Public safety is another number one priority, and public safety, we cannot police our way all our issues. I support uh, that that the voters in our beautiful city have the opportunity to vote. And if the vote goes yes or no, I will support to have enough police officers in our city. Also to have healthcare professionals, mental health professionals to answer mental health calls. Will have social workers to deal with domestic and other issues that don't need armed officers. Um, we also will support violence disruptors. We will. The biggest mistake we always make is that City Hall dictates to us rather than hearing from the people that was impacted by the trouble, by the issues. I would love to engage to bring the 9 neighborhoods in Ward 6 together and make sure that the dollars from the city hall resources go to neighborhood organizations. And you know why? If you look at throughout the pandemic, when the pandemic hit us, everybody was scared. The county, the state, the feds, how they're going to deal with it. Then, luckily, they figure out the best people to deal with to reach everyone in their community is through the neighborhood organizations that were giving away the food, that were really helping people stay in their homes with the rent resources, that were really giving masks and vaccinations, I got my first vaccination right in my neighborhood at the Bryan Cole Community Center. I think community centers, park centers, those are the centers we need to invest. City services, we all go to downtown. We don't have a single constituent service in our communities. We need to bring those services towards six and to our community neighborhoods. So I can go on forever why I want to run because 24 years I've been fighting and advocating for resources and equity. And equity become a sex word that has nothing to do with with equality. So I want equality. I want public safety. I want our community members to be safe, and our young population in the East African community, which is 20 years age average, and a high number of unemployment. We want investment for every community center in Ward 6. We want to bring people from Stevens Square and Lauren Heights to Seward. Between them, we want to bring those community organizations and community members and small businesses and come up with the solutions that I'll be able to take to City Hall, not vice versa.
What's your position on rent control? How does the rent control ballot question affect the residents of your community, the voters you're talking to?
I am a renter for 24 years, maybe all my adult life. And almost everyone around me is a renter. Um, I know all my friends are renters, and I wish we could all be owning our own homes. And one day we might be able to advocate for those resources. But right now, I believe that rent control is very important. I believe Kura has done a study commissioned by the city of Minneapolis, and it said that 3% or inflation adjustment is very ideal to work with. I believe rent control is very important. It contributes to our public safety. The unsheltered community, we all view them as people who have addiction. No, that's not true. Uh, at one point in the beginning, 40% of them had part-time or a full-time job. But I know people who have two jobs and cannot afford to pay rent and then feed their children and their family. I know those families and I know them very well. So I think rent control is very important, as well as working with the Hennepin County. As you earlier said, thank you. Yes, we need to build that relationship with Hennepin County. We need to build that relationship with our state and also the federal government. There are so a lot of resources that we can gain from them to build more affordable, not affordable, low income or income-based housing. So I think there are multiple ways we can address our issues. Yes, I do believe rent control is very important.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane, a special extended edition of our program today, wishing return to complete health to our friend and colleague, Lady J, out under the weather today, and asking me if I would fill in for these 2 hours. And obviously, I'm more than happy to and thankful to her for letting me do this, giving me a chance to bring the people I've been talking to for a while in front of you to talk about their intention, their desire to serve you as members of the Minneapolis City Council. Let me say that we're going to talk to more candidates in a second. And at the 3 o'clock hour, we're going to be talking to candidate for mayor of St. Paul, the incumbent Mayor Carter. That'll be a great conversation. And at 3:30, we'll talk to some of the activists, the actors around 2 or 3 of the ballot initiatives on the city, Minneapolis this year. So let me first next go to Alicia. Alicia, I'm trying to read your name here fully on my screen. And turn your microphone on, you're on, and introduce yourself. I'm having a senior moment. And you and I go back a long
girl. You can remember me as I'm
Alicia,
a Gibson girl.
Alicia Gibson, there we go. So my monitor is so tiny, I can't read the name under your picture. But you know what? I've always enjoyed listening and hearing and sharing your voice to the community. So let me welcome you, first of all, and ask you to take 5 minutes to remind our listeners here on KFAI and those who are connecting with us on our Facebook Live and other pages about your candidacy, your vision, what you want to see and bring in representing the people of Ward 10.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the honor of being on the show and appreciate everything that you've been doing for many months now so that everybody is really informed about who is running, who people are. There's a lot of opportunity for people to go through your archive and see everybody. So I really appreciate it. Yes, I'm Alicia Gibson. Like I said, you can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Yeah. And anyway, so I am running. This is my first time to be on the show with Mr. Behe. And, a lot of the things that he was saying really resonated with me. That this city is really operating from a top-down model right now. And as we have seen in this time of crisis, that's a very brittle system. And we're, it was really kind of astonishing. I kind of poked my head up to read national news and all of the crisis that's going on because we are really an authoritarian moment right now. And I'm seeing that on the local level as well, where there are ideas that are coming from the top and being pushed down onto the people rather than ideas and movements coming from the ground and moving up, solutions that are, culturally relevant, that are specific and address the issues of the different people where they live, rather than these one size fits all solutions. That is really just the replication of the model of white supremacy. Let's call it what it is, because white supremacy isn't just about always kind of coming up with solutions that work for some people. It is a way of doing business. It is a process. It is a method. That is what, critical legal theory, which I'm trained in, is all about. And when we talk about systemic racism means that it's not just about individual bias. It's about system bias, and system bias is about the way we do business. So this is a moment for us to really reassert and recreate, maybe for the first time, real democracy, something that belongs to everybody. And that is really the reason why I'm running. I have organized this campaign around 3 different kind of platforms. And one is restorative justice, the next is economic justice, and the third is environmental justice. And all of these things are really connected. One of the primary ways they're connected is that we need to empower community. That is my tagline. It is everything about what this campaign and what I would hope my service to our city to be about. When we talk about restorative justice, this is kind of the bucket where we put police reform, but I refer to it as restorative justice because we need to do a lot more than just reform the police. We need to build in alternatives to the legal system that are not oppositional, but that really kind of build up something, thinking about harm and the way that we can repair harm in a different way. And also ways that we can be in community differently. One thing I would like to do is to have subsidized training for anybody who wants to learn restorative facilitation, because this means that people can participate as volunteers. They can help when there are people who are being moved out of a penal system into an alternate system. But it means that people take those skills into all of their relationships, their personal relationships, into their public relationships. And that, I think, is really the work of transformation. The next thing was economic justice. And a lot of that is the housing issues that has been discussed here. And that includes revitalizing in Ward 10 the small businesses, much more of an emphasis on our small businesses. And then we have environmental justice, because looming over everything still is this, climate crisis. And that is something that we've got to address. But we have to address it in a way that is not just more of the same of, ideas coming down. because that's what has gotten us. This is an idea. That is how exploitation works. And that is what the climate crisis is really about. A exploitation of the earth that has run us into a dead end. And so we have to even change the way we are approaching how we're going to address it by making people the partners in green solutions, by mobilizing everybody to be agents of change. And so I really invite everybody to go to votealiciagibson.com, where I have very specific, details for each one of those things. Some people said too many details, but I say, no, this is a big moment. We really need to be thinking through these things.
Alicia, thank you. Let me ask you to take one of the other questions too, one of the ballot questions, just so that people are clear where you stand on question number 2.
Mm-hmm.
What are you telling people that look to you for guidance on how they should vote?
Yeah, I'm voting no on that. That amendment is chaotic and it's divisive. It's chaotic because it really has no plan. Some people say, no, there's a plan, and I'm getting mailers with 1, 2, 3. But, I'm trained in the law, and I know that what matters is what you vote for, what's in that amendment language, because everything else is just a notion. And so that is chaotic, and it has to be implemented in 30 days. And some people say, oh, we just need to, we're just going to put in an interim director in 30 days. I'm sorry, but people are not able to hire dishwashers in 30 days right now. That is a really unrealistic time frame for hiring anybody. So no, I would say vote no. Now, the other thing I say is what I hear and what I understand is that people are really beyond frustrated, enraged, angry, traumatized. People are still in trauma from everything that happened leading up to George Floyd's murder, the day of, the chaos that erupted afterwards. We've seen the reports of the ways that our protesters were treated so disgracefully. And so I understand that people in many ways are voting on Amendment 2, not for what's on it. And everybody that I talk to agrees with me. It has all of these failures. It hasn't included everybody across the city in even thinking about what police reform and safety should be. Everybody that I talk to acknowledges that. But for them, it's a referendum on the police. And to that, what I say is, and they're scared that the momentum will dissipate, right? If they don't make this moment now. To that, what I say is we have 2 ongoing investigations into our police department right now. One from the Minnesota Human Rights Commission and the other from the federal government, from the Justice Department. And this is not anywhere near done. And when those reports come out, we're going to hold every single person accountable that needs to be held accountable. We are going to use those reports to address our systemic failures. And if you elect me, I am going to be persistent and tenacious about getting that done. So no, this amendment is not anywhere near the beginning or the end of this story.
Last question, strong mayor or stronger city council?
Well, I don't see it in those terms. I'm going to take a third way.
Okay.
I call this the normal mayor system. I would not really be voting for something that I thought would decrease my ability to represent my neighborhood. This strengthens oversight because it strengthens the office of the auditor. Then it also strengthens the clerk's office to write good legislation. And really what it does is it enables, we need accountability system-wide, and we need accountability in City Hall. And this will really enable us to understand where the failures are happening. Because right now, everybody's pointing their fingers at everybody else. And this has been going on for too long. And so that's why I will be voting yes, and I urge others to vote yes as well. And on the third one, rent control, I come at that from the eye of a lawyer also. I'm voting no on that because the first clause in that amendment is illegal. The Minnesota statute says that city councils cannot pass rent control plans. And the first clause in that, this one gives you 2 options. And the first option says, well, city council will pass a plan. The second option is city council will pass a plan and the general public will vote on it. Number one is a clear violation. Number two, that could work. But I'm not going to vote again. I'm not voting for anything into our city constitution that is chaotic, divisive, or unlawful. And I would rather spend millions of dollars on public housing, shoring up public housing, on affordable housing, low income credits for renters, than spend millions of dollars defending bad law.
Alicia Gibson, candidate for Ward 10. Alicia, thank you so much. Good to hear you and see you here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for running. I want to bring one more of the candidates who's been a regular on this program, our Monday Leadership Series. Mickey Moore is a candidate for the Ward 9 seat on City Council. Mickey Moore, good afternoon. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Take a few minutes to talk about why you're running. What you want to bring to and for the voters in Ward 9.
Well, thanks for having me in today, Al. Some of my favorite people on the show today. It's so nice to be with such great speakers and such eloquent community activists. Ward 9, as many people know, or maybe some people don't know, is one of the wards that is really a ground zero for multiple crises in our city. It's ground zero for a homelessness problem that has gone unchecked for decades. It's ground zero for drug use and substance abuse, overdose deaths that are getting worse over time. It's ground zero for sex trafficking and problem local crimes that we just kind of don't talk about. We keep it under wraps. It's ground zero for violence and the increasing gun crime that Reverend McAfee was talking about. It's ground, it's where George Floyd was killed. It's where the businesses were devastated from the civil unrest. It's where we lost our police precinct. The biggest police station and most active police station in our city was destroyed. So it's really a melting pot of problems right now. Amongst being the most diverse community, instead of being a source of strength, it's become a source of real divisiveness and real consternation over why we don't have leaders who will just bring us together and move towards common goal solutions that are already out there. We talked amongst all of us about the importance of community programs. As a kid, those programs were critical to my development, of my character, of my self-confidence. The park and rec programs, the city programs, the after-school activities. Without those, who knows what might have happened, even with somebody like me. We need those uplifting programs to give our at-risk youth good alternatives to gangs and guns. We need to reinvest in our communities and in our cities so that everybody feels like they're being heard, they're being listened to, and they're being given the resources that they need to make it in this world. Right now, too many communities, too many neighborhoods are clearly being left behind. You can see it from the window of your car. You can just drive down particular streets and look at the disgusting levels of garbage, broken glass, and boarded up storefronts, and dirty needles on the street. And you can say, well, I guess nobody cares about this block. Another block, 5 blocks, 10 blocks away might look great. But we're piece by piece just leaving people behind, and it's not an accident, Al. We're doing this purposefully. And if we can have this kind of effectiveness with bad leadership, then we can do the exact opposite. What we need to do right now in this election is bring in powerfully better leaders, because the solutions already exist. What we're missing in Minneapolis is the effectiveness of leaders to work together to bring about the kind of common good solutions that it takes to make the changes that we need. Leaders that have the political will to do what's necessary without worrying about their own personal agenda or their political grandstanding or whatever their partisan politics tells them to do, whatever their extremist ideals might be. We need practical, solution-based leaders that just care about the people. They put the priorities of the people first above everything else and work to solve our problems as a community. And that's where that responsive and accessible governance comes in. We've got some candidates who are clearly advocating for doing what people don't want. That's what Reverend McAfee was talking about. How can you understand that 75% of all African Americans don't want this ballot initiative number 2 with replacing public safety, and then say that's what you're going to support? It doesn't make any sense. In Ward 9, I've spoken to thousands of residents and business owners, and they are overwhelmingly opposing ballot initiative number 2. Yet we still have candidates that insist on supporting ballot initiative number 2. How can you even represent our ward if you're not willing to do what the people want? So that's why I'm in this race. That's why I'm working hard every day, because I don't want a ward or a city that's going to continue to spiral out of control in this direction. I grew up here. I'm born and raised here. I love Minneapolis. It is my hometown. I have been so fortunate through all the obstacles and challenges that we face, like Kathy pointed out, of being a minority in a Minneapolis. All the challenges and obstacles that I have overcome, I love this city. And I've been so lucky to be so well supported, to have the opportunities that I've had. And I will do everything in my power to ensure that our children and our future generations get those same opportunities and chances to be successful and to achieve whatever their idea of the American dream is.
You've been fairly consistently clear with me in past programs about the dangers you see in the effort to pass rent control legislation. Talk about that. What is your position on rent control? What do you, how are you attempting to educate voters? And what's the source of your thoughts, your feelings?
Well, a lot of it is public awareness and the way that we've twisted the concept of rent control into a kind of a political message. Because when we talk about rent, well, Al, anybody can rent. Take a look at the high rises downtown, those luxury apartments. There's people down there renting, they pay $3,000, $4,000 a month. They love it, okay, because that was their choice. They want to rent those luxury apartments and live downtown for whatever reason. God bless them, and that's fine. But is that who we're talking about when we talk about rent control? Is that who we're trying to benefit? Is that who we're trying to save from having to pay too much for rent? No. What we should be talking about is affordable housing, because it's our affordable housing community that is suffering from high rents. Rents are too high. And for those people that are in our affordable housing community, we need to do something about that right away. Rent control is not a solution for that. Affordable housing, attacking the affordable housing crisis where it really exists, within the supply and demand dynamic, within the opportunity to increase our public housing and government assistance. Like Kathy, I grew up in the government assistance housing, Section 8, they called it. Okay, so I know exactly what that does for people and what that offers people. So we need to really focus on who are we talking about? Who is the affordable housing community that we're trying to help? Because we don't need rent control if you're paying $4,600 for a penthouse apartment to live next to the theater district downtown. What we need is rent abatement and rent subsidies and lowering rents overall for those people who are struggling to get by, who are having to choose between food and rent. We need to really crack that. And the problem again is bad leadership from our city. Our city has been concentrating almost exclusively on increasing renting, on increasing rental development, when what we need to do is lower our demand by transitioning our renters into home ownership. That's how we really get at that generational wealth gap that Kathy was talking about. That's how we transformatively change the lives of our underserved communities, by doing whatever we can to get them into that next level of wealth and equity, by getting them into the ranks of home ownership. And that lowers the demand for renting. We can attack the supply by in so many ways. There are so many abandoned properties, underused properties, unused properties, vacant lots. The opportunity for realistic, affordable housing-based development. I'm not talking about gentrification or more sky-rise apartment buildings like they just keep putting up in people's neighborhoods. I'm talking about affordable housing, townhouses.
So when you say affordable housing, are you talking about home ownership or renting?
Both,
Okay.
everything,
Mhm.
every option that makes
And you're
sense.
saying in either case, that the notion, the concept of rent control or fixed rates is not a good idea. It's not the solution.
Economists have proven it with the evidence. It's not a good idea. Rent control policies have many more negative side effects than they have benefits. It lessens the incentive for people to keep their properties looking nice. It incentivizes big property owners to turn their apartments into condominiums and sell them off to the highest bidders. It incentivizes new development to, instead of coming into Minneapolis, they just go to Richfield or St. Louis Park or Hopkins or some outer ring suburb where they don't have to deal with these kind of problems. So we end up with a much smaller supply of affordable housing options for people, and that will automatically hurt our affordable housing community, because affordable housing, like gasoline, is very strictly a supply and demand dynamic based marketplace. If you have a lot of vacant rental properties, you will see rental rates go down. If you have no vacant rental properties, rents are skyrocketing. And when you cater to big developers and increase those luxury apartments all around the place so that there are apartments nearby that are renting for $2,700 or $3,700 a month, that pressures the mom and pop operators and small property owners to feel like they have no choice but to raise their rents too. It's hard to have a duplex.
Alicia,
Mickey, the other
jump
thing
in.
there that happens is I think it's even more than pressures them to raise it. I think what happens is that the property values actually go up. And so what happens is that the property tax on the location goes up, and then they have to increase the rents in order to pay their mortgages. That is actually what has been happening here in Ward 10 for many years now. We have been, you talk about ground zero, we have been ground zero for tearing down naturally occurring affordable housing and putting up luxury, developments. I did the research ahead of a housing forum that we had and read from a blog on the Urban Institute that showed that parts of South Uptown are known nationally for its gentrification. And it specifically was talking about pushing out low income ownership and pushing out Black home ownership. So making that wealth gap even worse. And what I have been, I'm a neighborhood person too. I didn't mention that in the intro, but that is really where I have been working, serving the city at the grassroots level. And we have been trying, I have been a voice at the neighborhood association level saying, we need sustainable development. I am not against development. There are some of the new things that have come in here that are awesome. There are some new things coming in that are great too, but we need to have a diversity of housing types, which I think is what Mickey is talking about. And we need to make sure that what I would like for us to do is do a housing map for the entire city, ward by ward, but the entire city too, so we can understand where our public housing is, where our affordable housing is, where the luxury housing is. And we really need to be making sure that we have that as a real diversity across the city so that we're not concentrating poverty, which we are doing, and that we are not rapidly gentrifying, which we have done in Ward 10. So when, one of the things that I agree with, rent control is being talked about here. We are an 85% renter ward. Of course, everybody says, you're not going to be able to raise my rents. That sounds great. The problem is what happens as the investment goes elsewhere. Housing is really a regional issue. And that is, every expert that I talk to says, Alicia, thank you for getting that, because that is what we have forgotten about. And if you put rent control here, what happens is investment, even in affordable housing, because you have to get our affordable housing developers have to get financing for their projects. They have to get banks to sign on to what they do. If you have something especially as low as 3%, that investment is going to go to other places. And then the supply that we have is going to dwindle, and it's also going to decay. People are going to start living in slums because people are not going to be they are not going to be investing in, making improvements. I talked to one of our largest naturally occurring affordable housing developers, nonprofit, who said they manage like 5,000 units. And they said that 3% that was talked about, that was to go into place, they would go out of business. So
who was that? Which one was it?
Aon.
They're going to be on. They're going to be on at 3:30.
Oh, great! And hopefully they'll talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
The Cura study, I think that was right for Mr. Behe to bring that up. We actually need to look at that much more carefully. A lot of this momentum towards rent control came out, and they even came up with a 3% plan before the study was even launched. Really, what's the word I'm looking for? Given to us, right? And I talked to one of the people who wrote that study, who was part of the writing of that study, and they said that study has not been looked at enough. So what I would like for us to do is have a working group on home stabilization. So we are not confusing means and ends, and we are looking at all of the different tools that we have. Stabilization is one thing, affordable housing is another. They're kind of overlapping. But we need to understand that we can solve for stability and we can destroy affordability. So we want to be very careful on the way we do this. And as I said, I'm actually not 100% closed-minded to rent control, but I want us to be very careful and be open-minded about all the tools, including there are programs where people can earn equity. We can have, but we got to collaborate with our county and our regional partners to participate in these programs where low-income people can earn equity on the rent that they pay, and then they can build a nest egg for themselves to then go and buy condos, go and buy their first homes. Those are also the kinds of things that we need to be focusing on, and not just one small part of the puzzle.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Special extra program today talking to candidates for public office, city council in Minneapolis. We're going to be joined by the mayor of St. Paul shortly. That'll be an important conversation. But before we do, let's take a station break for top of the hour announcements. I'll turn it over to the station and we'll come back. Kathy, if you can stay for a few minutes, and Mickey, maybe you can respond to the last question as well. And I'm still with you. I'm not sure if the station got the message to do the station ID. You know what? So let me just do this in case I think we're still going live. Let's keep going. Kathy, let me turn the microphone over to you. You might want to respond to the conversation again about rent control. It's an important conversation.
That's why Ward 10 needs Alicia Gibson. She is genius. I love Alicia.
Let's go to Kathy.
It is an important conversation. But what we have to realize, $28 million has already, I think earlier this year or last year, been allocated for affordable housing. In the mayor's 2022 budget, $15 million additional dollars is going to be allocated. What we don't look at is we really don't look at the disparities when it comes between white and black home ownership. We really don't look at that. 75% of whites own homes more than blacks, 25% blacks. We really need to look at it. I like how Alicia described it. It is more of a comprehensive dialogue, but we also have to be realistic. We as potential politicians coming into this arena, these positions that we are trying to get are 2-year positions. So here's the deal. There's not a lot that you're going to be able to get done in 2 years, create work groups, have funding for this, have funding for that. We've got to be real precise in the first 100 days what we are going to be able to do. Because the reality is by the time we get in office, that budget is already set. The mayor is asking right now, there's $50 million left of the American Relief Fund. There was $271 million already came to Minneapolis. Part of that has come. Another portion of that will come in May of 2022. If the things that are on the ballot, if they pass, what does it mean for this city in 30 days? If we pass rent control, how do we implement it? Because I too know people that live in houses or apartments downtown Minneapolis that are paying actually $4,000 a month, but they can afford it. And what does rent control really, really look like? And that's why it's hard for me to wrap my head around what rent control really does look like, because no one wants to talk about, rent subsidy. We had a bill, Heading Home Minnesota, I believe it was called. It was in the Senate. No one's talking about rent subsidy. No one's talking about, families that make less than $15,000 a year. We got to have more of a comprehensive dialogue before I say, yes, let's have rent control for everyone, because who is it going to be designed for? Because not only is Ward 10 being gentrified, in Ward 5, we have the Harrison neighborhood being gentrified. We have the Willard Hay neighborhood being gentrified. So what does that look like for us as people of color? We are not at the table. And when I tell people the county got $245.5 million, where is that money coming to North Minneapolis? Because it has already come to the city. But how is it coming to us as people of color? What type of programs are being put in place, incentives to become homeowners, to become entrepreneurs? We really have to stop and put a pause on everything. And we got to pick the right candidates that is really going to have our voice when they get elected. Because rent control, if you have people that are saying we don't want rent control, if you have people saying that we don't want to get rid of our police department, what does that mean when you have elected officials that go off on a tangent and just do what they want to do? That's not listening to the people. And we have evidence of that. And we really need to look at what's happening to this city. In Uptown, the Apple Store left. Many businesses have left. In the downtown area, Target removed all of their employees from the downtown city center. That's 3,500 plus people that could have shopped in the downtown area. Many businesses, downtown is almost like a ghost town. So we have a lot of issues that we are facing. And you know what? If rent control doesn't pass, then what? Then do we just go away? If the charter doesn't pass when it comes to no police department, what do we do? What happens to those people? Do they just walk away and they just go do something else? We need to really stick to the fire and really have some strong initiatives in place, whether these things pass or fail. It doesn't matter. We don't think how we can work together collectively. If I vote and rent control does not get passed, what happens? Can we still come together and look at rent control maybe in 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Can we look at what is really happening to this city? I know what's happening in North Minneapolis, and I'm going to tell you, North Minneapolis right now, we just opened up the Capri, which is fabulous, but George Sherman has a property that's right on the curve of West Broadway. No one's talking about that. He got a lot of incentives to build that property. But what about the other vacant lots? What about the other vacant lots that could be built for home ownership, affordable housing? What is happening in this city? And Al, we're not having that conversation. We are not having real talk with real people about what is happening day to day in their lives. We're not. We have an encampment that's right across the street from Union liquor store. People are living out on the street. We're not talking about that. So rent control is going to help them. Affordable housing is going to help them. No, we need some subsidized housing thrown in this conversation as well. So what is really going on in our community? People talk about the drug dealing. They talk about Merwin's liquor store. We've been talking about some of these issues for over 20 years. Really, literally over 20 years. And what I'm telling people, we're facing the worst disparities, and it is time now. There is no other time. This city has 21 departments, civil rights department. We have a CPED department that deals with housing. We have a police review council that's at the civil rights department. We have a race and equity department that's with the city coordinator's office. Come on, it's time that we really start dissecting how this city has failed some of these communities and have really failed the Black and brown community. We had 3 children, more than 3, 5 children, 70 plus children probably have been shot. Come on.
Kathy, let me stop you there. We're going to close this part. Thank you so much for your passion.
Yes,
thank you for the information. Mickey, thank you. I want to keep the program moving. You set it up in a sense for the next conversation. I'm going to welcome the mayor of St. Paul, the sister city to Minneapolis, to the program. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane, and we're pleased to have the opportunity to connect with people that are looking for your vote, looking for your support, who are seeking election or re-election to city council, and in this case, the office of mayor. of the city of St. Paul, Melvin Carter. Melvin, are you there?
I am. My camera was working backstage. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can do, this is radio and it's also video, but radio works. That's number one. Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. And I'm sure you heard some of the passion in the conversation we just had with people seeking office in Minneapolis. I wanted to start off, however, with you talking about your candidacy, your city, your success in your current term as mayor of St. Paul, and what you're telling voters as you invite them to support you in another term in the November election. Good afternoon, first of all, and thank you for being here, Mr. Mayor.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me on. You've been telling the stories of our community for a very long time. I remember being a young person and seeing Insight and, visiting you with my mother back in the day. So I appreciate you continuing to stay in the trenches in the way that you always have and making sure that our tradition of griot in our community, ensuring our stories are told by us, that's obviously very critical. We've had a tough last couple of years on the planet, in our state, in Minnesota, certainly in St. Paul. We've had a tough last couple of years. And what I'm sharing with our residents is that I'm running for re-election ultimately for two reasons. One, because I'm really proud of all the things that we've been able to accomplish, from raising the minimum wage to eliminating library late fines to investments we've made in affordable housing to launching our big, huge partnership to start every child with $50 in a college savings account, to all of the things that we did, from emergency supports for businesses and families to guaranteed income in the pandemic. I'm proud of all those things, one. And two, because it is very clear that our work is not done. We are in this moment right now, which I believe will go down in time as one of those historic moments. I grew up wanting to know where my parents were during Freedom Summer, where my grandparents were after Pearl Harbor, etc. And this is going to be one of those times that our children and our grandchildren will call us to account for what we did right now. The question is on the table, and ultimately we as a city, we as a state, we have as a country have got to decide right now whether we're all in this together or whether it's every person for themselves. What we've learned over the last 2 years, my grandfather used to say, who you knew, Al, my grandfather used to say, if experience won't teach you, then nothing will. And what we've learned over the last 2 years without a shadow of a doubt is the extent to which the disparities that have plagued Minnesota for far too long are actually dangerous for us all. We've learned that as long as any one of us can't afford a safe home to shelter in place, can't afford to take 2 weeks off to quarantine or care for a sick child, or can't afford to go straight to the doctor when they have symptoms, that we're all worse off. We've learned that when whole parts of our community are concerned about their ability to trust and rely on the men and women who swear an oath to protect and serve our communities, that we're all worse off. And those things demand action. I believe that the work that we started before the pandemic to ensure financial empowerment, to break the disparities in our community, and to build prosperity for all of us, not just sort of a macro prosperity, but a participatory prosperity that every person can participate in. That's the type of work that St. Paul really needs moving forward. And at the end, ultimately, it's not because of me. It's because of all of the St. Paul residents, all the business leaders, all the students, all the workers who have found their voice in City Hall via our administration.
Crime is a major issue around the country, around this town. And you, Mayor Carter, your community has been rocked in a major way in the past couple of weeks in two major incidents. Talk about how the community is feeling, number one, and how you are responding to the trauma from the downtown incident a couple of nights ago, and then from 2 weeks ago when known and loved members of the community were found dead in Wisconsin. What's going on in St. Paul?
Well, what you just said is absolutely true. Known and loved. I think of when Philando Castile was killed and people were using his name as a hashtag. And we in community who saw him at Golden Time and saw him at JJ Hill, he was, he worked at the school that my children went to kindergarten at, had to figure out how to explain to our children what happened to Mr. Phil. And in the same way, we have experienced the unthinkable in our community. That quadruple homicide that we experienced was just breathtaking, was just heartbreaking. And we're a community that has so few degrees of separation that 2 of those 3 families are families that my family goes back decades with, if not generations. The young woman who was murdered this past weekend in the mass shooting that we experienced in St. Paul went to school with one of our children. And so, while there are some folks I think who want to grab onto this as a hashtag and an opportunity to grind a political axe, the first question is, I appreciate what you asked, is how the community is feeling, because these are our loved ones. And it's interesting because there are some folks who would say, well, this has never happened before. And the truth is, it's been happening for a very long time. My father, one of the stories that shaped who he is losing his cousin and closest friend to gun violence when he was 25 years old. I remember as a child one day where my father came out and said, everybody in the house, and wouldn't let my sisters and I go outside, and we didn't know why, but he had a premonition. And surely enough, one of our older cousins got killed that evening on Selby Avenue. I remember waking up one morning in junior high and trying to figure out what is that hole in the wall above my bed. And so when we have people who have endured this crisis for so long, and then you have folks who come in and try to use our losses, exploit death, exploit pain, exploit trauma to try to make whatever political points they woke up trying to make in the first place. It's disgusting and it's unacceptable. And one of the things that I've committed to our community, Al, is that when I come forward and tell you that this thing we're doing on public safety is different, it's going to be because it's different. That we're not going to rewrap the same old. We've been promised a bill of goods for a generation that said if we just hire more police officers, build bigger jails, and hire tougher prosecutors to fill them, that our neighborhood will be safer. That has not worked for us. I don't know anyone who would argue that's worked for us, which is why we need a much more expansive portfolio. Our approach in St. Paul, which it wasn't built by me, it was built by 2,000 St. Paul residents who have been had their fingerprints on this over the last 4 years. Really has 3 main components. One is what we call optimal response. That says on an event like what happened on Saturday, there's just no substitute for our police officers, our firefighters, our first responders, our paramedics. They showed up right away. They triaged the scene. They took care of patients. They got people to the hospital. Our police officers had 3 suspects in custody less than 24 hours later. They did exactly what we needed them to do in that moment. But it also recognizes that over half the time when people call 911, it's not because there's any instance of violence or even an emergency or even a criminal act happening. It's because somebody's concerned, somebody's in crisis in community. And when that happens, we owe our community an optimal response for that as well. So that's why we're launching this kind of social worker response portfolio that says we can respond to these instances in ways that do really 2 things. One, help address and resolve, hopefully, the cycles that keep people stuck in cycles of violence and crime and calling 911 over and over and over again, while 2, helping to free up our officers to focus on the incidents of crime and violence that we all want them focused on anyways. Then beyond that, our goal is to say, how do we make the proactive, data-driven, research-based investments in both individuals and places? There's a lot of research that says people who know what they're going to feed their children tonight, know where they're going to sleep tonight, and are connected to community are statistically speaking less likely to become either an offender or a victim of crime, which is why we have to raise the minimum wage, which is why we're doing guaranteed income, which is why we're doing all the things that we're doing to make sure families are stable. And that places that are well designed, well kept, well maintained, that maintain the sight lines, et cetera, can actually limit opportunities for crime through environmental design. You show me a place that any police chief in America is concerned might be the next site of a violent crime, I'll show you a place that probably hasn't been invested in along those types of lines. So that's the onus and the architecture of this comprehensive, coordinated, and data-driven approach to public safety that we're endeavoring in St. Paul right now.
Let me ask you, Mayor Carter, this is, I'll give you a classic Al McFarlane-ism.
All right.
I say it all the time, but let you deal with it and work with it, because I think you are addressing it, but let me just put it out there. I say that too often, Mr. Mayor, our people get the misery and they get the money. That they can be anybody,
Yep.
but the implication is that our misery ends up being commodified, managed, maintained. Our success, our lack of access, our inability to move beyond the artificial boundaries that constrict and confine us to subpar performance, to lack of equity, ownership, control
That's right.
of our lives and our destiny, somehow is maintained almost
That's right.
as if there is a conspiracy because it's good business to keep us in this position. Now, I may be wrong in saying that, but I throw it out because I think I'm speaking to some of the frustration that people in communities of color feel at the historic deprivation that our cultures have experienced. What are you doing about that? And if the analysis is wrong, just tell me, Al, that you're not in the ballpark with this.
Al, I think your Al McFarlaneism is as close as could be. And this is why I always tell folks my favorite thing about the work that we're doing isn't the what, isn't the policies, isn't the budget items, but it's the how. When I got elected and it was time to choose our cabinet, what did? We didn't create a small exclusive transition team to be the most kind of insidery insiders. What we did was said, listen, we're going to call for 100 members of our community to come and participate in this, what we called our community-based hiring panels. Every single member of my cabinet, which has been lauded in the press as the most diverse cabinet that the city of St. Paul has ever seen, every single member of my cabinet has participated in our community-based hiring panels, where community members source candidates, community members look through resumes, community members do the first round of interviews, and community members send me the list of finalists to look at. We don't have to do that, but it's what we do because we're responsive to community. Far before George Floyd was killed, we are the first city I know of that said, you know what, our police department can't go into a back room and write their own use of force policies. This is a contract. This is a covenant between our officers and our community. It has to be built through a two-way, 2-month conversation. I don't know of any other city that's done that. When we build our budget, whether it's our kind of regular annual budget or whether it's the American Rescue Plan COVID dollars we have access to, we do it through every single year through a public budgeting process. And all I'm saying is this. My first year in office, someone asked me if I wanted fireworks on the 4th of July. And I said, yes, I love the fireworks. And they said, well, it costs us a total of about $100,000. And I said, no, like, what's next? We have other priorities. And 2 weeks after that, we were able to find $100,000 to launch a legal defense fund for immigrant refugees in our community. A member of our progressive community, someone I've worked with and known and revered for a long time, looked at me and said, wait, but isn't that an equity issue? Isn't fireworks an equity issue because Black kids and white kids and rich kids and poor kids and kids in every neighborhood can look up and see the fireworks just the same? And that was instructive to me. I explained to her, no, equity is what happens when we intentionally dismantle disparities. And oftentimes that's actually not the same thing as equality, but more so it says, we need a driving definition of what we even mean by equity if we're going to strive to achieve it as a community. And so I go back, and my master's degree is in public policy from the Humphrey School. But when I live in the social justice place, equity seems amorphous, and we're not sure what we mean. We know we want the pictures to be diverse, and we know we want to feel good about what we're doing, but it's hard to kind of put our thumb on exactly what we mean by it. Before that, I did my bachelor's degree in business administration. And in business school and in corporate America, equity has a very clear definition. It's a money word. It means who are the owners. It means who are the decision makers, and it means who gets to participate in an economy. In other words, if I own equity in a company and that company has a good quarter, then I have a good quarter too. And all I'm saying is, if we're going to drive equity, it can't be about me, even as the city's first Black mayor, disappearing in my office and saying, here's what I'm going to do for these other people. It's got to be about self-determination. It's got to be about people being able to participate in the governing process. And that's why we do the work in the way that we do that. This philosophy, by the way, that you just described, draws its roots in the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence says governments are instituted, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. When we think about the Me Too movement, consent has taken on a very specific meaning. It doesn't mean nobody voted against it. It doesn't mean nobody protested. It doesn't mean there were no picket signs outside or any of those types of things. What it means is there was an active and informed and participatory agreement in the work that we're doing moving forward. That's how we build our equity work. And that's at the core, frankly, of why we've been able to do all the things that we've been able to do here in St. Paul. A reporter asked me recently, is it a surprise to me that given all the things we've been through, and it feels like St. Paul has endured some of everything that they can throw at a community, along with Minneapolis, our twin cities, Minnesota has. And they said, is it a surprise to you that the city seems to still feel in line with your vision? And I said, no, it's not a surprise, because it's not my vision at all. It's our vision that we built together.
Mayor Carter, thank you so much for being here. Good luck in your campaign. Thank you. I'm going to switch now to your colleague from across the river, Mayor Jacob Fry.
You mean that really fast guy who ran a marathon in under 3 hours?
Melvin, it's good to see you.
Good to see you as well, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Melvin. We'll see you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Fry, good afternoon. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Mr. McFarlane. Thanks for having me.
And please call me Al. Thank you for being here. You know, this is a crossroads kind of feeling for our community. A lot of stuff is on the table. People's energy, their feelings, their perceived interests at risk. Sometimes people are angry at their traditional friends and allies. And so this is the environment that you're seeking re-election in. I want to give you a chance to talk to my audiences here on KFAI and on Facebook about your campaign, your vision, your work, and why voters should support you in your bid for re-election. So I'm going to give the microphone to you and thank you. Talk to our listeners.
Well, thank you so much, Al, for having me during some of the most tumultuous and significant events that our city has faced. I've always wanted to be sure to interview with you first, being a strong voice in the Black community and making sure that we're valuing and prioritizing Black press. And certainly this is no different right now. And, you know, what I'll tell you is through 2 years of unprecedented progress, which we saw, I mean, everything from record-setting investments in affordable housing, more on a per capita basis than almost any city in the entire country, to major moves around economic inclusion, to, yes, 2 years after of unprecedented challenge. I've told the truth. We have charted an honest and principled path forward for the city of Minneapolis. And, you know, has the last 2 years been tough? Absolutely. But this city doesn't quit, and neither do I. You know, one of the things that we've seen again and again, and we hear out on the campaign trail, is that we're getting a great deal of support because of consistency. You know, as mayor, especially when you're leading through a time of great difficulty, you're going to get hit from all different sides. You'll get hit from the far left, from the far right. You'll get hit by activists, business owners, you name it. And, you know, that's part of the job. But through all of it, again, we've told the truth and we've remained consistent. And that's part of the reason why our campaign is going so well right now.
Let me ask you to weigh in on 3 of the ballot initiatives. I'll have people after you bringing different points of view, but I think it's significant to have your take, your voice on the 3 ballot questions. That's one thing. The second thing is I do want you to take a deep look at how we respond to this national and now local increase in crime and fear for safety. But what about the 3 ballot questions, first of all, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I think we could probably spend about 45 minutes on each one of those ballot questions, but I'll give you my position as quickly as possible. So on question number 1, I'm for it. You just had Mayor Carter on just a minute ago. This proposal would make our system more like St. Paul's system, where you have a clear executive in the mayor that's able to control and run day-to-day activities. You have a clear legislature in the city council that is able to pass laws, do constituent services, do broad engagement, deliberate, and then pass a thoughtful ordinance. And then you have our system, which is confusing. It is gray. It limps along during good times, but during difficult ones, during an emergency or crisis, yeah, it is very problematic. So I do think this is a very important tool to use. You know, so many mayors going all the way back to Hubert Humphrey have said that this particular system needs to be changed. And I think this ballot is a good opportunity to do so. The second question, which is the one regarding policing. Now, there are certain parts of it that I'm very much for. I am for a comprehensive strategy to public safety because not every 911 call requires response from an officer with a gun. We can pair a unique skill set like social workers or mental health responders with the unique circumstances that are happening on the ground. We've invested record amounts in that kind of safety beyond policing work, and we will continue to do so. Importantly, you do not need a charter amendment in order to do those things. You just don't. We can do those things now. I think we should be doing even more. The part and the main reason why I oppose question number 2 is that it would have the head person of this new department, be it Chief Arredondo or anyone else, report to 14 different people, 13 council members and the mayor. When everyone is in charge, nobody is in charge. And when you have one council member from Ward 3 or 4 or 6 or 8 telling you to do something different from another one from Ward 12 or 1 or 2, inevitably, that's a problem. It's a lack of clarity in terms of direction, and I think it reduces our ability to both hold officers accountable as well as safety in our city. So I'm against that question number 2.
Number 3?
Number 3 is a little more complex and nuanced. So I vetoed the first rent control ballot initiative that was moving forward because I'm not for initiative via referendum. I think that elected officials should have the courage to craft policy, listen to experts, listen to data, and then craft a clear policy that works. Now, I vetoed that one. We approved the second, or let it go through anyway. I am for the process that would allow the legislative body and the city council to, again, deliberate, engage with experts, and craft a policy. So I'm for that. We'll be voting yes on question number 3. However, given that we haven't seen the policy itself yet, I can't comment on the substance, and I'll reserve that decision for a point in time when we've actually seen the policy itself.
Last 2 questions, Mayor Fry. A general, what's your message to voters that helps them feel reassured amid the incessant reporting of violence all around us, not only in the places where we usually see it and expect it, but now reaching other people where other people live? What do you mean, Al McFarlane? This is showing up to white people in white neighborhoods and white people downtown in ways that Black people have experienced and have become kind of anesthetized, unfortunately, too. But the trauma now is a trauma that all of us are experiencing differently. What are you telling people, voters, about your intent to support them and their desire, their need, and their right to have safe lives, safe communities? What do you think?
Well, to your point, Al, there is a disproportionate impact of violent crime. About 90% of some of these, the gun violence that we're seeing is happening in about 5 neighborhoods that are predominantly communities of color, and specifically our Black community. And so, you know, I hear all the time, and it's accurate, crime is caused by deep-seated inequities, whether that's housing injustice, food injustice, lack of job security. But crime is also an accelerator of those same inequities. So as mayor, I have an obligation to not just deal with the longer term, to deal with the causes of those deep-seated inequities like housing and economic inclusion. We also have an obligation to deal with the issue right now. Now, unlike some of my opponents, my position has remained exactly the same, which is that we need a both-end approach to public safety. Yes, deep-seated accountability. Yes, a full-on culture shift and safety beyond policing. And we also need police officers. Right now, we have fewer police officers per capita than just about any major city in the entire country. We have around the same number as St. Paul, and they're a dramatically smaller city than we are. And so Yes, in order to properly conduct investigations, in order to make sure we have a gang interdiction unit and we can engage with community members where they're at, you need a properly staffed department. I have pushed for 5 additional recruiting classes in my next budget. I'm hopeful it will pass the city council. And by the way, the officers that we're bringing on, they need to be diverse. They need to be from and for the community. They need to have deep-seated ties with the community they're charged with protecting and serving. Whether that's the kid on the street or the small and local business, that is a big part of what we need to push for. That's getting the right officers in and getting the wrong officers out.
Last question, Mayor Fry, your budget, you've just presented a was $1.3 billion budget, a little more than that. Talk about your budget and what are the opportunities that you've discovered even in the midst of the crisis we're experiencing locally and nationally.
Yeah, I will. We put our money where our mouth is. We talked about affordable housing when I ran for office. And again, we have invested more on a per capita basis than at any time in our city's history and more than almost any city in the entire country. We talked about making sure that we are prioritizing economic inclusion. And so we doubled down in areas like our commercial property development fund, which ensures that our Black business owners don't just own the business, but they can own the underlying real estate. Mayor Carter, I heard him a second ago just talking about equity, ownership. We got to be talking about ownership right now. And if you own the land, then when the value goes up, you don't get the boot because the rents got jacked. You get to reap the benefits from that gain in value. We have a tool that we push for and achieve that is accounting for that. We have investments in everything from public safety to environmental sustainability. But look, here's the thing. I think the big 2 focus areas for these next several years need to be on 2 overarching concepts. One of them is public safety and police accountability. And again, those 2 things are intrinsically linked. They are not mutually exclusive. The second is inclusive recovery. We need a strong and inclusive recovery. So we're not just getting back to the old normal. This is not about getting back to the old normal. This is about blowing by the old normal and getting to full transformation in our city and making sure that the precision of our solutions now match the precision of the harm that was initially inflicted. As you know, Al, and you've been doing this a while, there are no magic wand fixes. There are no hashtags or catchphrases that'll suddenly make everything magically better. If there was, then you and Mayor Sharon Sales Belton and mayors before her, et cetera, would have already provided for them. You got to do the hard work. You got to dig down and you got to take a consistent and strong position as to the course that we're ultimately going to chart. And I'll tell you, even through the toughest times, we've done that.
Mayor Jacob Frey, thank you for being here. Good luck in your campaign. Any last comments, or you want to ask people for the vote? Here's your time.
Well, with that, yes, we're running a very strong campaign. We're very proud of the broad-based support that we have, especially from our Black community. And we've developed very deep-seated relationships in areas like the North Side. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your support. But most importantly, we can't stop on Election Day because we have a whole lot of work to do going forward. And so I'm also asking for your partnership.
Jacob Fry, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Al.
We'll see you next time. Okay. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. We're winding towards the end. This has been a wonderful 3-hour stretch for our program. Normally on Tuesdays from 1 to 2. This week, a couple extra hours. We're here filling in for our colleague, Lady J, a little under the weather. Hope she's doing well, but pleased to fill in while she's here, and it gives us the opportunity to bring these rich and important voices and issues before you, our friends and neighbors here on KFAI, and those of us who are connected through Facebook Live or other social media platforms. Thanks to our relationship with the Black Press of America, this program is being streamed across a national channel, the Facebook channel of Black Press USA. So we appreciate the relationship we have and the support we have with the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Here for the last part of the program, I want to focus on the 3 ballot questions, amendments they're called, to the charter. And joining me for that, 2 of the 3 that I'm expecting are here. I think Laylee is here, that's here, and also Alan Arthur is here. I'm expecting to be joined momentarily as well by my friend Bill English. But Laylee and Alan, thank you both for being here. What's important to me is to help our viewers and listeners understand these critically tough and complicated issues. And I ask you each to focus on an area that you really are working really, really hard on. And Laylee, I want to go to you first and ask you to talk about question number 1. And that is is it question 1 or question 1? That's the one. And actually 1 and 2 are connected in some way. But let me start with you talking about question number 1 and also question number 2, the question of the Department of Public Safety. Laylee, so you introduce yourself if you would.
Thanks, Al. My name's Laylee Fadahi. I'm the campaign manager for all of Minneapolis. We are a group of residents and stakeholders from across the city of Minneapolis that have come together, united in our interest in ensuring that the outcomes of this year's Minneapolis elections are ones that leave us with a better, more effective and government, as well as with elected leaders that are committed to working together and with stakeholders and members of the public collaboratively to come up with, durable solutions to the challenges that are facing our city, which, of course, first and foremost, right now centrally is policing and public safety, but also expands to economic recovery, certainly, housing affordability, all of these issues.
So charter question number 1 deals with government structure. Should we have an executive mayor and the legislative council? That's one thing. And that's tied, I believe, in some ways to question number 2. And that's the question that creates the Department of Public Safety. Laylee, I'm going to ask you, I think as a lawyer, or I think you're a lawyer, to just take a minute to define what the issues are, both pro and con, and certainly at the end of it, talk about your position of all Minneapolis in these concerns.
So I think the issue that unites questions 1 and 2 have to do with the ability of our government to set priorities, set mandates, and then have the ability to pursue them and to deliver outcomes to the residents of Minneapolis. Question 1 changes Minneapolis's government structure. I mean, right now, Minneapolis's government structure, we're the only city of our size where we do not have defined roles that separate what the mayor does, the mayor, serves in kind of an executive function and a council that serves as a legislative function. Right now is kind of a big jumble. You won't find another government that is structured like Minneapolis is. It's not regarded as a recognized model. It's not recognized by anyone as being a best practice. And through quite a bit of research and elicitation and speaking with, department heads and whatnot, we're really, seeing what the limitations of our current government structure are. And that is that, the department heads are receiving direction oftentimes from not just the mayor and the city council, but even from individual city council members. And what this does is it makes it very difficult overall for, say, a department to set priorities and a work plan. And perhaps what's most important for residents, to have a clear line of accountability, to, understand who is directing the day-to-day work, to whom are these department heads and staff members accountable. So what question 1 does is it fixes our government structure to make it align with that of basically every other city. It says that the mayor is responsible for the day-to-day administrative operation of the government and of the administration of the departments, and that the city council maintains the power of the purse, the ability to legislate ordinances and set the policy direction for the city. And it also creates an independent audit function that reports to the council and ensures that things are being done the way they are supposed to. Now, what question two calls for Minneapolis to, it would eliminate the Minneapolis Police Department from our city charter. It would eliminate the role of the chief of police from our city charter, as well as the funding and staffing minimum for policing that is currently in our city charter. And it would put the future of public safety and the rebuilding of a public safety infrastructure in the hands of the Minneapolis City Council, who has yet to present any semblance of a plan for what the future of public safety is, in concrete terms, going to look like. And the residents of Minneapolis are going to reject this charter amendment because A, it's going to result in having fewer police officers at a time where what we're hearing from residents is that they want more officers and they want more better officers. It is going to eliminate the position of Chief Arredondo, who the residents of Minneapolis have widely put their trust behind to lead much of the transformational police work that we're all united in recognizing needs to happen. And third, and perhaps most centrally, because there's just no plan. And folks do not want to trust the future of our public safety to the same city council members that stood on a stage calling for defunding the police, only to flip-flop about the issue multiple times since as it became politically unpopular.
So all Minneapolis, your position as an organization, I know it, but I'll let you say it.
Yes, we support a yes vote on question 1 and a no vote on question 2.
Let me say, as a matter of disclosure, I own Insight News and the principal at McFarlane Media Interest. My company has been engaged by Laylee's company to provide and purchase advertising in a collection of ethnic media in Twin Cities around the voting proposition that she has described. But it does not involve KFAI. So I'll put that on the table. Arthur, thank you for being here. Laylee, thank you. Alan Arthur, thank you for being here.
Two first names, Al, two first names.
Two L's, great name. Listen, we talked for the past couple of hours. I've had city council candidates say pro and con, discuss the question of rent control. And you're one of the largest developers of rental housing in the marketplace. And I hope that you would be able to do just what Laylee has done. And that's kind of give people a very informed sense of what the question on the ballot means. And can you take a second just to do, the elevator story on what's at stake in the rent control discussion?
Well, we don't fully know. First of all, we're in a situation of change here in the Twin Cities, Al. And I've been to my friends who have angst. I remind them of a quote from Frederick Douglass: "Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are those who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning." And we're in the midst of that change, and you got to have thunder and lightning. And so we all should be paying attention, and we should be wringing our hands about what will happen or what can happen in one direction or another, I suppose, on all three of these subjects that you have here today. Rent control, first of all, what's really proposed is to give the power of the city council to do something about it. I and our organization are fully supportive of making sure that people have a place to live, a place to call home. For some reason, we insist in this country to keep people down at wages of $11 and $12 an hour, and then we think somehow it's going to fix itself in the marketplace. It is not. And so doing something is absolutely necessary unless we want homelessness to double and triple. And that's the direction we're headed. So I get asked, one of the most common questions I get asked these days is rent control good or bad?
Mm-hmm.
It depends on who you are and whether you need a home or whether you are trying to make money renting homes. And so there's a wide range of what could happen here. There's no question that rent control at almost any kind will have some depression on the marketplace. It will depress the value of certain kinds of real estate in certain kind of places. Is that good or bad? Probably depends on how much you're depressing it. Obviously, if it's a really tight rent control, very strict, it will absolutely keep people from developing rental housing in the marketplace. And the law of supply and demand says that if we grow as a community and we have the same number of units as we have today, the rents will go up, or the property will get worse in condition because that has to be capitalized or recapitalized every so often. So I can't give you a definitive answer except to say that if it's too strict, it will cause significant problems in the marketplace. But there's a compelling reason for us to do something serious about the fact that folks can't find a place to live when they're only making $10, $12, $11, $15 even an hour in the marketplace.
Well, the candidates that were on earlier seem to fall into a couple of camps. One saying that one or two have been saying that they are renters 25, 30 years, and they are concerned about rent stability for people that have been in generations or two of renting. And for that reason, the idea of protecting them from market forces made sense. On the other hand, candidates were saying that the issue is affordable housing. And I know the idea of affordable housing doesn't stand by itself. You've addressed the need to create incomes that work for people, that let them fare well in the marketplace. So you also said, Alan, that it depends on who you ask and what their interests are. So I'm going to ask you as a developer, your company Aon is the largest, I believe, developer of rental housing in the metro area. Correct me if I'm wrong. From your point of view, what makes sense to make sure that your business and your mission succeed? And I want to tell people that your business is a nonprofit,
Yes.
has a special mission. So I don't want to paint you to be a baron, because I don't think you are. I think it's important to show you not to be a baron, but an entrepreneur who's filling and serving an important housing need. So from your position as that business guy, what are you saying to people who ask you?
Yeah, I'm saying that the limits on rent increases have to be at least the cost of operating housing. Can't be less than that, or we're all in big trouble. If it's more than that, our job at Aon is to keep the rents down anyway, down as far as we can, and still operate the property. So they probably will not have a significant impact on Aon or our properties unless it's egregiously tight. And I assume that in the end, it probably won't be, because I think our city council will figure that out. But so on us, it's not a problem for us. But Al, we're losing in the Twin Cities 6,000 units a year of affordable housing, and we're only producing 2. That's not very good math for fixing the problem. And so something has to be done. Either the public has to come up with significant resources to create more affordable housing, or we have to come up with resources to preserve as much affordable housing as we have. And the biggest share of affordable housing in the Twin Cities is owned by the private marketplace. So is rent control a magical answer? No, it's not. But you can't say you're against it and have no ideas about or suggestions about what else we do and pitch in and help to do something, unless you're okay with us having homelessness doubling and tripling.
So put yourself in the shoes of a renter now, if you would, Alan. What are her or his considerations as he or she walks toward the poll? And the question says, rent control. I mean, it's such a loaded concept. It's a loaded word, especially if you think it's going to personally affect you and your ability to keep where you live. How does a consumer navigate this and operate in her or his best interest? What do you think?
In the short term, I think most rentals will probably support rent control because it's going to limit the magnitude of the rent increases that they see. In the long term, if they're long-term thinkers, they might take a look at some of the challenges and the details of the rent control proposal itself when it comes out to ask, is this going to hurt my prospects in the long run because the supply will be reduced in the Twin Cities or in the city of Minneapolis. One of the challenges, of course, is just the city of Minneapolis proposing this, and the Twin Cities is a big marketplace, and so you're talking about maybe the city not seeing more development and other municipalities seeing all the development.
The consequences if the city tamps down rent controls, developer just says, I'll go to Bloomington or Crystal or Fridley or somewhere where there's not this restriction and where I can operate more freely.
Yeah, we developers are all whiners, Al, and we want to go where it's easiest to do what we can to meet our needs. And in the private marketplace, that is to maximize our ability to gain revenue. So that's right.
We're down to the last 5 minutes here. I want to swing back to Laylee just for a second before we close. Mm-hmm. Thanking you again for being here and helping with this explanation. I think for me, the critical thing is that people hear the words, hear the analysis and see, and then have the tools they need to make up their mind on what's in their best interest. And at the end of the day, from my point of view, you want voters to vote, to do what you have to do to make sure that your voice is among those that are counted. And I wanted to get a sense from you, Laylee, how is the market responding at this moment? Now, if you had to measure, put your thumb up and say which way the wind is blowing, how does Minneapolis look right now on question 2 and question 3 from where you stand?
I think so. Question 3, I will defer to Alan on that one. But in terms of question 2, I think we see the wind blowing in the direction of voters voting no on question 2. As voters do exactly as you're saying, they become more engaged in the issues and they're looking at what it is that this amendment does. What does this amendment, if anything, do to transform policing? What does it do to improve public safety, to improve accountability? And as they're looking into those questions, the answer is coming up nothing. That this charter amendment is neither necessary nor sufficient to transform our system of public safety. It is neither necessary nor sufficient to expand public safety beyond policing. It does nothing to improve accountability for police. And it is unnecessary to remove it's unnecessary to empower investments in things like group violence intervention, mental health response, non-police response to various police calls. It's just I think that's what people are finding, and as they're coming up short on that plan, I think voters are going to vote no, and hopefully then do that difficult work of rolling up their sleeves and putting pressure and accountability on elected officials to take a more planful and intentional approach to transforming public safety.
And on question 1, what's your sense telling you?
On question 1, we're also finding that voters, as they come to understand what it does, are increasingly supportive. And we think that this is a measure that is going to pass. When we talk to voters, the kinds of questions they ask us are there any cities in the country where people are trying to change their government structure to look more like Minneapolis? The answer is no. They wonder about, if the government structure, creating an executive mayor and legislative council is so bad. Why is nobody trying to change St. Paul's government to look like Minneapolis's? Why did St. Paul change it 50 years ago and they've been happy ever since? So I think that residents are interested and deeply invested in having a more effective, efficient, and accountable government. They have seen over the last 4 years how our government structure in times of special difficulty can produce poor outcomes, and they are now ready to vote yes on this question.
Alan, I'm going to close the program with you. If you would offer an instruction or advice, if you want to the voters. What do you hope people will do in a principled fashion as they enter the ballot box?
Well, whichever the way they vote, I hope they get involved in figuring out how we solve our affordable housing problems. I'm not laying my either odds or vote on either side of this particular issue. I will say I would guess that because renters don't typically vote as much as homeowners, it'll probably go to the no side of things. But I'm the worst prognosticator in the world, Al. And I also want to say, Al, I can't believe this is the first time I've been on your program since the days of Clarissa Walker, Chlorstein Wilson, and Cherie Campbell.
Way back when. We go
way back when. Yeah. So anyway, it's great to be on your show.
So good to see you, and thank you so very much for what you do. I want to talk to you more about what you're doing in housing. Layli, thank you for what you're doing, and we want to encourage our listeners, our viewers, to do what they have to do. Do your work, study, and vote. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. And wishing my friend, Lady J, speedy recovery. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.